This is billions of blocks, and this is one block. And from this singular block, I'm going to attempt to collect every block in Minecraft in 100 days. What are you looking at, Jeremy? I'm also going to transform this singular dirt block into an epic floating island paradise. You see, this block regenerates whenever you break it, and it does this forever, slowly progressing through 10 different phases, from dirt and stone, through different biome structures and dimensions, to the final phase, the end. But there's a problem. There are over 1,000 blocks in Minecraft, but the one block only spawns 106 different blocks. So to collect every block, I've made my most insane plan yet. I'm going to have to get every mob head, beat every boss, and move out of my mom's basement. Wait, what? Why is that in the script? So you might be thinking, seems pretty easy, right? What? No, why would you think that? This is the hardest challenge I've ever done. No one's ever even done this before. So sit back, relax, and go get your snacks. Because this is how I survived 100 days on one block in Minecraft Hardcore. On day one, I was born into this infinite empty abyss of suffering. I mean, fun. I realized there was a conveniently existent magical block of text floating in front of me. Unfortunately, I'm illiterate, so that wasn't much help. I then forgot I'm a Minecraft YouTuber for a second and decided to touch grass. Our first block. After inhaling a couple more dirt cubes, I obtained our second block, wood, as well as more undecipherable shapes floating above the one block. I then acquired immense wealth, including 3 new blocks. And yes, seeds and saplings are technically blocks, so we need to collect them. I continued picking up 1,500 kilogram dirt cubes and storing them in my back pocket to progress through the tutorial phase, and then finally began expanding my territory out into the void. Not that much though. And while the blocks will be easy to collect at first, they're only going to get more difficult to collect throughout the challenge, the worst of all being the legendary blocks, like the dragon egg, heavy core, and the most difficult of all, tall grass. Yeah. I wish I was joking. I also placed and then crafted down to table crafting and then got back to manual labor. I then learned that the magical shapes communicate information. Save my items in chests. Ah, bro, you forgot. I'm in hardcore. If I fall, my items are gone. Yeah, more than that is gone. This is a hardcore mode. If you haven't noticed, look at that. The hearts, they're hard. And with my singular synapse putting in overtime, I learned how to understand and process this information and then utilize this knowledge to achieve a feat called following instructions. This part is actually mildly terrifying every time somehow. And with that, I had obtained a new block. I then continued throwing hands with the infinitely regenerating inanimate object and received a new block for my efforts. What? I can't craft anything with a chest? What the heck? I gotta play Minecraft. I had reached the first phase of 10, the plains. I then continued the expansion of my startup tyrannical floating nation under axolotl rule, and then got back to harvesting resources to aid in the expansion efforts. I quickly began getting a bunch of new blocks, including a new wood type. Oh, hold up 1 second. Sorry, I was just checking my wacky watch, and it looks like it's about time for the plan. Phase 1, the platform. We have some insane goals for these 100 days, but whether or not we're able to achieve these goals is gonna come down to the foundation we lay in these first few days by setting up a base, farms, and a few other things we're gonna need to collect some of the more difficult blocks later on. But it all starts with step 1. Just like collect basic resources and set up animal and crop farms. So yeah. Then the one block birthed a less intelligent looking version of me into this cruel world. Whoa. What? It's a creature. Your name is, stupid, dumb, idiot, disgusting, idiot face. And you're also stupid and dumb. Did I mention that? You're stupid. Jeremy. Your name is Jeremy. It's probably someone with that name watching. Sorry, bro. Anyways, after a healthy dose of belittling others to cope with my insecurities, I got back to the rat race. Then the one block decided to spawn more life into the universe, and after some more block de-existifying, I got back to expanding our civilization's territory, violated the fire code, witnessed the horrifying miracle of birth again, finally constructed some wooden utensils, and then witnessed the horrifying miracle of Chick-fil-A sandwich creation. I got back to obliterating the one block's hopes and dreams, and then had the displeasure of welcoming another citizen into our clearly thriving civilization. Oh wait, actually make that 2 new inhabitants. I then constructed a chest to store our material possessions. I then realized our island thing was getting a bit cramped, and my personal space bubble is approximately 2 kilometers in diameter, so I got to work expanding the island. Again, not that much though. I realized I now have 2 wood types already, and a single log can craft like 1 billion different blocks or something like that, so I began crafting as many different oak and birch blocks that I could, including but not limited to planks, slabs, stairs, signs, doors, trapdoors, fences, a functioning prefrontal cortex, pressure plates, buttons, a composter, a barrel, and a partridge in a pear tree. I then decided our floating platform's inhabitants were a bit too not imprisoned, so I began fixing that problem. Also, egg. Cool. Anyways, the citizens were unfortunately not obeying my command, so I expanded out the platform a bit more in the shape of a small unfinished crop farm, and then guided our unwilling participants into their new home, and then finally began our tree farm. Then Jeremy's long-lost brother decided to be summoned from the 1 block, so I did what had to be done. This town ain't big enough for more than one Minecraft pig. Yeah. I also got some more chickens and some more breakfast as dawn broke on the morning of day 2. I then began our agricultural enterprise, and with step 1 of phase 1 basically complete, it was now time for step 2, the tree farm. Basically, we need to get a ton more wood to continue expanding the platform and to complete step 3, the mob farm. So I smacked the 1 block some more, obtained a couple more citizens, and then continued expanding our floating platform out into the void and relocated our possession containment, container, and our table crafter. And it might not look like much. Anyways, I got back to annihilating the 1 block and profiting off of its suffering until I reached the end of the plains phase. And as you can see, we've already gotten a decent amount of blocks, but it's literally a drop in the bucket compared to the number we need to collect. But now that we're at the underground phase and have access to cobblestone and thus a furnace, there are going to be a lot more blocks we're able to obtain. The only problem is that this phase spawns hostile mobs, and it's not like I'm bad at the game or anything, it's just that my gameplay ability is consistently affected by a persistent miscalculation of strategy and execution, perpetuating a cycle of underperformance. So basically I'm bad at the game, but I'll never admit that publicly. Oh wait, cut. Anyways, basically I just put up this fence so I don't fall into the void. I continued providing the 1 block with destructive criticism to obtain our first pieces of cobblestone and then upgraded to a stone pickaxe. I collected a few more pieces of cobblestone as well as some other new blocks, and now we have a furnace, which will obviously be key to getting a ton of the blocks we need throughout this challenge. I continued deconstructing the 1 block, and then the 1 block claimed another soul. I swear it wasn't me. I realized our friends were a bit too close to the 1 block, and I was worried a creeper might explode, which wouldn't be good for business. My emotional state. Yeah. Anyways, I expanded the platform and then began attempting to move the enclosure and all the mobs a few blocks further away from the 1 block. Keyword being attempting, because this was actually insanely tedious to do. Also, for some reason I decided to hit Joseph into the void, and then for some reason both of the baby chickens just did that. So that is unfortunate. Anyways, I managed to kind of succeed relocating the enclosure despite all the odds, and then got back to anxiously vaporizing the 1 block in anticipation of a hostile mob spawn. And then... oh my god. No! No, Jacob the cow. No. We've lost a friend, but more importantly, we've lost our ability to progress in this challenge because without at least 2 cows, we can't get infinite leather. And without infinite leather, we can't make an enchantment table or bookshelves, which will not only help in preventing our untimely demise and help us atomize the 1 block more quickly, but are also blocks, so we need to collect them. But at least we also got our first pieces of iron, I guess. My only option to solve this problem is basically just to keep decimating the 1 block and hope another 2 mushroom cows spawn, because I'm pretty sure regular cows won't spawn anymore until the after phases. But after a little more 1 block pulverization, I got attacked by these venomous anxiety beams. But I quickly activated my neuron and attacked back, and I actually dealt with the possessed mustache trimmings rather swiftly. But I did realize I should probably add some kind of enclosure around the 1 block to make dealing with string barfing goblins and other mobs easier. So I added this fence around the 1 block, made a couple more ferni, put our freshly acquired iron into the oven to bake it 350 degrees for 45 minutes or until golden brown, and then got back to unplacing the 1 block, and then another creeper spawned and destroyed my brand new enclosure and my tree farm. I realized our base was still a bit microscopic, so I continued expanding the platform, improved our storage system a bit, and then on the morning of day 3, I expanded our currently non-profit tree farm, and then improved the 1 block enclosure by making the fence a block further out from the 1 block and placing slabs like this so creepers won't be able to see us whenever they spawn, meaning they won't immediately blow up our base anymore. These slabs will also prevent spiders from getting out of the enclosure since they can climb walls. I then upgraded the rest of my tool set to stone and then got back to deleting the 1 block and whatever unfortunate creature spawned from the 1 block, and obtained more iron right as one of our saplings finally decided to grow. So I chopped down the tree and began smelting the iron. I then realized there were more blocks I could craft, so I crafted an oak trap door, which I guess I didn't make earlier, ladders, a lever, and coarse dirt, which I'm going to be seeing a lot of later on because if you don't already know, coarse dirt basically turns 2 dirt and 2 gravel into 4 coarse dirt. And gravel is renewable via the Nether and a couple other methods, while dirt is not, so we're going to be using that method to build the island with later on. I then began relocating our crop farm to be further away from the 1 block, and by further away, I mean 1 singular block further away. But I also replaced this dirt with wood and added some more fencing around the crop farm. I then continued debilitating the 1 block, and then this zombie spawned. And as you can see, this this enclosure makes us perfectly safe and will definitely not break many times throughout this video. Okay, I can see that there's text on the screen that says foreshadow. Anyways, I continued to insert another synonym for breaking the one block, re-deaded another of the undead, got some more iron, and then continued expanding the tree farm and platform more, along with moving our storage system and workstations further out from the one block again. I then crafted a stone cutter, which we're going to be using a lot because a lot of the blocks in this game are just variants of other blocks. And I used said stone cutter to turn the granite, andesite, and diorite we got into slabs, stairs, walls, and the polished block slab and stair variants of each. And I then began smelting some of our cobblestone into stone and our clay into bricks. Because there are also a ton of stone, stone brick, and regular brick block variants we need to get. I then got back to demolishing the one block and turned another zombie into dust particles. And then another mushroom finally spawned, and I pushed it into the animal enclosure on the morning of day 4. But I wasn't sure at this point if mushrooms and regular cows could breed, so I continued devastating the one block in hopes of getting another mushroom so we can get infinite leather. I got some more iron, these bunnies spawned and mysteriously disappeared somehow. Then I got glowberries in a chest, which is technically a block, defiled another majestic expression of nature, another creeper spawned and despawned, I obtained more iron and just continued deleting the one block and any and all mobs that spawned from the one block, and then another mushroom cow actually spawned, so I began showing him to his prison cell, which is also the entire prison, but realized the facility was at maximum capacity, so I crafted some more slabs and fences, expanded the mob enclosure, and moved it slightly further from the one block. And then our chicken escaped, but I got it back into the enclosure, and then I replaced these birch fences in the one block enclosure with oak wood. And our tree farm had begun turning a profit, so I began collecting said profits. My inventory was already overflowing due to my wealth of extremely valuable possessions, so I organized it some and then crafted some bricks from the bricks we got from our raw bricks and turned said bricks into different shapes of bricks to get some new bricks. I mean, blocks. I then went back to disintegrating the one block, crafted a pot and a decorated pot, just without the decorations, and then began crafting up a bunch of stone and stone brick variants. I then went back to disassembling the one block and discontinuing any mob that spawned from the one block, and then finally reached the end of phase 2 and was rewarded with the best sapling type. And we've now arrived at phase 3, the snowy tundra. And this is the phase where things start to get a bit more interesting because this is the first phase that spawns a monster party, which is basically like a boss fight, but instead of a boss, it's just a bunch of difficult hostile mobs from the phase. I demoralized the one block a little bit more and got a new block and some more iron. But before we continue obliterating the one block, we need to get to work on step 3, the mob farm. So I quickly got the 6-sided wood and stripped variants of all the wood types we currently have, and then turned all of the wood I have into slabs, and then yet again had the displeasure of being reminded of the existence of phantoms. But I realized our one block enclosure is actually perfect for dealing with phantoms, so after constructively criticizing the phantom's existence, I used some of our iron to craft a new pickaxe and some shears, which I used to shear our sheep and obtain a new block, a bed, and got my first night of sleep after 87 hours of sleep deprivation, which will prevent phantom spawning for a few days. And on the morning of day 5, it immediately started thunderstorming. This is actually something we need to happen later on to get charged creepers to get all of the mob heads. But for now, it's just annoying because lightning could strike our base, or us, which would be the opposite of good. We could just sleep through this, but we really shouldn't be wasting entire days like that since there's so much we have to do. But I'm pretty sure lightning basically never strikes in worlds that are basically entirely a void like this, so I utilized our freshly crafted lumber to begin construction on a bridge stretching approximately 32 blocks away from the main platform. I then began construction on the mob spawning platform, utilizing a variety of different wood types for, contrast? Yeah, my style is very abstract, you wouldn't understand. Anyways, I completed the spawning platform, well, not really, but I completed as much of it that I could with the wood that I had, and then completed the bridge to the spawning platform and blocked off the entrance with fences and slabs to prevent any unwelcome guests from entering the premises. I then politely obliterated this birch tree into dust, and then waited for the mob farm to start producing profit. While I waited, I decided to expand our tree farm to accommodate for the rapid economic growth of the Minecraft tree economy. See, that's exactly what I mean. Business is booming. After playing some deforestation simulator, this poor bunny unfortunately passed away, although I have no idea how. Wait, I then crafted my first bow along with some arrows, and by that point, the mob spawning platform was actually functional. And since we now have a mob farm, we can get to work on a later phase of the plan, because it's time to begin my plan to collect all the mob heads, starting with step 1. Trap the mobs. Basically, we need to trap at least 1, but ideally 2 or more zombies, skeletons, and creepers in a boat in order to get all of the mob heads later on. So I crafted and placed down a boat, and then 2 zombies literally immediately got in the boat. But anyways, I continued expanding the platform to make way for step 4, real estate. I mean, build a house. Yeah, also the mob farm was actually working pretty well, so that's cool. I then sniped this skeleton, and as the sun rose, my employees, spontaneously burst into flames. I panicked and quickly put a roof over their heads so I could start collecting rent. To save their lives. On the morning of day 6, I decided I actually want to build my dream mansion on the other side of this platform because this is definitely not my 5th attempt at this challenge, one of which lasted over 60 days, and I'm suffering from mild brain rot doing the exact same challenge over again, and I need to do something differently so my brain doesn't implode at any moment. So yeah, that's definitely not the reason. So I continued expanding the base by filling in the corners so the platform became a big square-like thing, so I can finally have a strong geometrical presence in my life. Anyways, I then cautiously skedaddled over to our scuffed mob farm and collected the profits, which was literally just 2 XP orbs, so mildly disappointing. Since I thrive on anarchy, I decided to incite the collapse of society. So I unmade my entire tree farm, forcibly evicted the animals from their enclosure, and then finally harvested my first piece of wheat after only 4.8 billion years of waiting. Anyways, I dismantled every chest and workstation in sight, and then relocated all of my chests and workstations to the other side of the platform. Then I threw another egg. Epic. Then another wheat stalk decided to finish growing, so I harvested it, replanted my microscopic wheat farm, and then constructed a brand new animal enclosure and lured our unwilling participants inside. Except for Jeremy, he's exiled now. No, I'm just kidding, he doesn't deserve freedom. Also, I threw a bunch of snowballs. For some reason. I finally had enough wheat to begin breeding our mushroom cows, and then I replanted our tree farm with spruce saplings because I obviously want to use spruce wood for the base. I then actually began the creation of our humble abode. I built a staircase with cobblestone slabs, with a spruce outline and fences obviously, because I suffer from a rare disease known as block game skill deficiency. After relighting up the base, I went back to obliterating the 1 block until some strays spawned, which allowed me to obtain some skeletal remains and thus also obtain bone meal. Then I crafted a shield. It's not a block or anything, it's just because of my clinically diagnosed skill deficiency. I then used bone meal to harvest more lumber, and then reluctantly began building the platform for the house. I was mildly terrified that a skeleton would shoot me off into the void, but I was about 60% sure the mob farm platform was too far away for that to happen, so I continued constructing the house platform and also built a fence around its perimeter. I then saw this zombie harassing my prisoners, so I promptly escorted it off the premises. I then actually began our residential real estate endeavor by beginning to place in some oak pillars, and I ran out of cobblestone, so I just completed the platform with some off-brand stone instead. I finished the spruce outline of the platform. After that, I demolished a spruce tree, shaved the bark from the oak log pillars, and initiated the construction of the walls with spruce. Once I had collected more wood, I continued working on the pillars, walls, and fences, and then decided to add a door. Might be a bit too luxurious, but I'll make sure to stay grounded, don't worry. Unfortunately, I quickly ran out of funding, so I had to raise some capital. So I resumed my excavation of the 1 block, a doggo then materialized, and then immediately escaped the enclosure. Then I got our first bits of golden amethyst, and also got some bone meal from a chest, but not that much though. And got some dark oak wood, which is a new wood type. A snowy fox or whatever they're called also spawned, and then someone attempted to despawn. I have no idea who though, but then it escaped the enclosure, and good job, bro. I also crafted a new iron shovel and a sword, and then continued home improvement, but didn't really get that far before running out of resources again. I then crafted some cobblestone variants to check off some blocks, and then initiated construction of the roof of the house. And I switched to using slabs to complete the walls because I'm currently broke. And after chopping some more trees to acquire more building materials, I managed to complete our house. Well, not yet actually, because we still need to move in, and there were no U-Hauls available for rent in my area, so I began moving our belongings into our 3 square foot apartment by hand. And for the first time in my entire life, I decided to actually attempt to somewhat organize our items along the way to hopefully save time later on in the challenge. Because believe it or not, this challenge requires a lot of crafting, and thus finding random blocks and items constantly. We even have a chest for valuables. We don't have many valuables. Anyways, then I moved all my workstations inside and illuminated the interior. Now that we've completed step 4 and have the 4 essentials for survival, food, water, shelter, and a DVD of the classic 2013 film Shrek the Musical, I went back to demoralizing the 1 block because it's now time for phase 2. The 1 block. Well, actually, we've already started this phase, and we're currently on step 3 of phase 2 of my 4-phase plan. Phase 3, part 2, chapter 173, section 3.4. Season 5, episode 2. Anyways, we basically need to focus a bit more on progressing through the 1 block because there are a few different phases that we need to get to and will not only unlock access to a ton of the blocks we need to collect, but will also make it possible to build the insane floating island base I have planned. So I continued obliterating the 1 block and then some goats spawned. And I decided to be merciful and leave 1 alive. I kept demoralizing the 1 block for the rest of the day and managed to get some more iron and gold, and also some more bones and bone meal, which I used to acquire my first friend on the morning of day 8. Then I went back to devastating the 1 block, chopped down another tree, and then and continued excavating the infinite block and dealing with mobs. Then Dog attempted to help out. Top 10 wholesome anime moments. Then I got a new block from a chest, blue ice, which is epic because I thought I was gonna have to get like 81 ice blocks using silk touch later on to get this block. Anyways, I began smelting all the gold I got, added to our still not valuable valuables chest, and then continued pulverizing the one block and another wolf spawned. Unfortunately, however, it didn't want to be my friend, so I trapped it in here forever. Then a polar bear spawned, and when I hit it, totally and completely out of self-defense, the sweeping edge did damage to the wolf as well. So I did what had to be done. Sorry, bro. Anyways, then I put an endangered species out of its misery, bullied the goat for some reason, continued deleting the one block, and then the monster party spawned. I immediately ran back to my shelter to cower and feed. I then realized Dog was attacking the skeleton, so I began shooting at the skeleton, and then Dog teleported to me, so I made him sit. But the mob party kind of destroyed the enclosure, so the skeleton escaped and proceeded to trespass on my front porch. So I blocked off the door and then deleted the skeleton. I then just shot the rest of the mobs into the void with my bow. But yeah, the enclosure design kind of broke, so I need to reconstruct it slightly larger. So I got to work on doing that, and then the goat finally attained freedom. I completed the one block enclosure upgrades, and then unplanted and replanted some more trees. Then I moved this row of fences out one block, and then began the expansion of our agricultural enterprise, but didn't get very far before giving up my hopes and dreams to return to my day job. Then this Arctic fox spawned, and then promptly escaped custody shortly after. I then got back to the rat race, excavating stone, chopping wood, committing atrocities in the name of our Lord and Savior Jeremy. Our inventory and storage system were getting a bit disorganized, so I decided to craft the MVP of all Minecraft updates since the shield for the first time, a bundle, and then constructed a new tree felling device. I continued obliterating the one block for the remainder of the day, and then another wolf spawned on the morning of day 9, which I promptly adopted to obtain another friend. I then bred our 2 wolves to obtain another friend, so we've profited 2 friends today. I went back to disenfranchising the one block, and yes, I'm aware that disenfranchise makes no sense in that sentence, but I'm running out of synonyms, okay? Anyways, then I impeached this Arctic fox right in front of Goat, and then got back to expanding our farmland, and began cleaning up our storage system a bit to make room for the new Clash of Clans update. And began dumping all my recently acquired loot into our storage system. I then continued work on our farm and managed to complete the relocation and expansion effort, plant our 5 seeds, and construct fencing around the property as well. I then acquired a block of melon, which I guess I hadn't crafted yet, and then created a carved pumpkin and a jack-o'-lantern. So another 3 blocks have been crossed off the list. Then I finished tilling the farm, placed down some more wheat seeds, as well as some potatoes I guess I got from a chest at some point. Then I unalived this fox and began showing Jeremy to his new home, where he will remain for the rest of his natural lifespan. I then deleted the one block some more until I got some more bone meal, and then began accelerating nature to increase dead grass profits and expand our farm. I then used said dead grass to continue breeding our livestock. I then went back to obliterating the one block and finally reached the end of phase 2. And we're now finally at phase 3, the ocean phase, which is perfect because sand as well as many other blocks we can get from this phase are going to allow us to collect a ton of blocks. But then phantoms decided to spawn, so I provided them with some destructive criticism and then got back to unexisting the one block. But my inventory quickly filled up, so I began emptying it as well as attempting to better organize our storage system a bit. It's now day 10 and we're officially 10% of the way through this challenge. And we've made a lot of progress so far, but I'm slowly beginning to realize just how insane my goals for these 100 days really are. So we need to keep up the pace. I went back to obliterating the one block, but then began chopping down our tree farm because it's actually time to begin work on phase 3 of the plan, the base. Beginning with step 1, the frame. Beginning with step 1.1, marking the top and bottom of the frame. Because my plan for this base is more ambitious than any other base plan I've had yet, so we need to get to work on it early on. I want to build a massive floating island with a giant castle in the center, surrounded by a bunch of different sections, representing the different phases of the one block. Well, I guess not all of them though, because there'll only be 8 sections in total. So it's more like they just represent the main elements of Minecraft as a whole. But anyways, I want the island to be built around the platform, which means we need to build down and up to mark the bottom and top of the island so we can get to work on the frame. So after collecting enough building blocks, I broke into the one block enclosure, placed down a water bucket, and began nervously descending into the void to build down approximately 32 blocks from the one block. I somehow managed to survive, but not without adding a new brown spot to my gaming chair. I made my way back up to the platform, closed the hole in the platform, and then crafted some slabs and ladders so I could reopen the hole in the platform and begin construction of our first basement floor. I built out a platform big enough to reach this spot I marked, and then built a ladder up to the main floor, which is how we'll access this basement floor. We're going to have to build smaller floors, going all the way down to the bottom of this pillar eventually, but I'll just do that later. For now, I rebuilt the one block enclosure roof, lit up the area around our house some, and then I realized that the goat got into our farm somehow. And as I was moving this slab marking the water source up half a block so it was easier to see, the goat did like that, which was not epic. Anyways, I tilled some more of our farm until my hoe broke, deleted some phantoms, crafted a new hoe, and then completed tilling the farm. I then used some of the sand we've gotten so far to craft sandstone and began getting some of the other sandstone variants. I reorganized our chests some more, and on the morning of day 11, I returned to tree chopping because it's now time to go approximately 32 blocks above the 1 block to mark where the top of the floating island will be. Except I actually messed up right at the start and ended up building up like 37 blocks instead of 32. But that's not really a big deal, it just means the island will be a bit taller than I had initially planned. And now that we've completed step 1.1 of phase 3, I immediately got to work on step 1.2, the outline of the top of the island. I want the top of the island to be a rough circle shape approximately 64 blocks in diameter. And this circle will be split into all the different sections the island will have later on. So I anxiously built out 32 blocks in one direction, making absolutely sure I lit up every inch of this wooden walkway with torches on my way back, because I definitely didn't lose my previous attempt at this challenge to a creeper that spawned on the frame of the island because I didn't light it up fully. Definitely not. Anyways, we need a more permanent way of getting up and down from here, so I broke down my initial wooden tower and then built up a new tower with ladders directly above the entrance to the basement floor. Once I reached the top, I built out a small platform and connected it to the floating wooden bridge. I then collected some more wood and got back to work on step 1.2, this time building out approximately 32 blocks in the other direction to make an approximately 64 block long line of wooden planks. I gave up on that for a little while to fix the 1 block enclosure again, harvested our crops, fed our livestock, and then I discovered that you can actually shear mushroom cows to become regular cows. And for some reason, it makes a mini explosion effect when you do it. I had thought this might be possible, but when I looked it up, I honestly didn't believe this was real. Anyways, we now have access to infinite normal cows as well as mushroom cows, so that's cool, I guess. I continued gathering wood to work on the island frame, but in case you haven't noticed, it's currently nighttime, and I don't want to risk a phantom or a skeleton from our mob spawning platform knocking us off into the infinite abyss, so I decided to get back to work demolishing the 1 block. Also, this enderman spawned, so that was funny. Some turtles immediately spawned, and I don't know if I was just feeling less villainous than usual, or if it's just because we need 2 turtles in order to get a turtle egg, which is a block we need to collect, but I decided to spare these turtles' lives for one reason or another. A large percentage of the blocks we need to collect are all the different dyed variants of dyeable blocks. There are 16 different colors and over a dozen different dyeable blocks, which adds up to like over 200 different blocks in total that we need to collect. Sand will help us get the glass variants and concrete later on, but in order to dye all these blocks, we need dye. And most dye requires flowers, which are also technically blocks we need to collect. So I placed a 3x3 grid of dirt with the grass block we got earlier in the middle so we can bone mill this area to get flowers and thus dye from. Anyways, then I only saved one of the turtles that spawned for some reason, even though I'm pretty sure I need to get 2 turtle eggs. But anyways, then I went back to vanquishing the 1 block, got some new blocks, and then this trident drown spawned. So I unexisted it and went back to obliterating the 1 block. Also, it's raining. Aw. After some more 1 block extermination, these things spawn. I'm just kidding, I know what these are called. I'm just not gonna say because I don't know what these are called. Anyways, I headed back to my apartment and dumped my monthly income into my bank account. I also crafted another bundle. After that, I went back to throwing hands with the 1 block and then got our very first diamonds. This is the coolest moment of my entire life. Then this guardian spawned and began threatening me with its eye lasers. My masculinity is more immense than at least 1 cubic foot, however, so I was able to cower in fear successfully. It actually wasn't as difficult as I was expecting to take out, but I did take some thorns damage. I continued deleting the 1 block for the rest of the day, and then bullied Jeremy some more and unloaded our profits on the morning of day 12. We've already collected a decent amount of new blocks just directly from the 1 block, but there's still a lot more we can collect from the blocks we're getting from this phase. But before I get more blocks, I decided it was time to get back to work on step 1.2 of phase 3 of the plan. So I began climbing up to the island frame, but realized I should probably have a water bucket on me, so I converted this ice block we had into another water source, constructed an infinite water source over here, and also got a bed because that actually might be better at breaking my fall since the platform is basically all slabs. Anyways, then I actually headed up to the top of the island frame and began expanding the platform right at the top so it's about 2% safer. Then I built out the other 2 oak lines in the remaining directions, and I also lit them up, of course. It was already getting dark though, so I headed back down to the base and returned to smacking the 1 block for like 2 seconds, and then I began fully ensuring that these zombies will never see the light of day again, or at least not for a while, and that there's no chance of them ever knocking me off into the void. But mobs started spawning on the platform, so I began sniping them with my bow. But then this fully dripped out zombie flexed his superior social status on me, so I contacted the authorities, which consist of myself, so I hit him with an epic comeback I found on Reddit to flex my superior IQ. I then destructed this staircase so mobs couldn't climb over, although I don't really know how that would prevent that since the staircase was on my side of the fence. Anyways, I went back to obliterating the 1 block, and then an elder guardian spawned. I thought quickly and followed my cowardly instincts by deciding to run away, and then started shooting at it with my bow. Then when I started hitting it with my axe, it escaped somehow, and then it just jumped off. bro. And when I went to check it out, a skeleton shot my favorite vital organ and did 2.5 hearts of damage. After cowering in fear again and healing my injuries at a superhuman rate, I returned to battle and managed to knock the skeleton off into the void. Also, we got a sponge. I don't know, we might have already gotten that, but we got it. And I had gotten mining fatigue from the Elder Guardian, so I ordered a venti caramel latte, extra latte, hold the grande espresso. What? And drank it to remove the effect. I then constructed a second roof above the 1-block enclosure to hopefully prevent any more Elder Guardians that spawn from escaping the enclosure again. Anyways, I then finally utilized our fully grown grass square thing to begin collecting some flowers to get some dye. And that not only checks off a couple blocks, but now we can get to work getting some of the different dyed blocks we need. I did that for the rest of the day and then crafted some dye as well as began smelting some sand into glass on the morning of day 13. I then headed back up to the top of the island frame to get back to work on step 1.2, except I actually began work on step 2, filling in the frame. Funnily enough, this is probably the most ambitious goal of this challenge in a way. Well, at least in trying to fill the entire underside of the frame during these 100 days. Filling in the top shouldn't be nearly as difficult. The only difficult part will just be collecting enough dirt, but I'll explain my plan to accomplish that a bit later on. For now, I began marking where the middle section of the island will be with the dirt I have, which will be approximately 32 blocks in diameter, which is approximately half of approximately 64 blocks, which is the approximate diameter of the outline of the whole top of the island. Anyways, even though I had approximately a little over 2.5 stacks, I only managed to complete approximately not that much. After enlightening every square inch of the frame and dirt placed so far, I went back down to the base and obtained some new blocks with the glass we smelted and the dyes we collected. Red glass and glass panes. Yeah, that's it. I didn't have a lot of glass. But I also expanded our storage system to make room for our rapidly expanding wealth. I also happen to have a little over a stack of gravel, and like I explained earlier, this means we can turn 2 dirt into 4 dirt, and 4 into 8, and then 16, 32, 64, etc. into infinity. So I began using that method to duplicate dirt until I had converted every last atom of our gravel into dirt. Once I had completed that task, I stowed away some of said dirt into our storage containers for safekeeping, so we don't run out of dirt for further dirt duplication in the future. And it was nighttime, meaning I couldn't get back to work on the island frame. So I began chopping down more trees for more lumber to complete the wooden frame. There are a few miscellaneous blocks that I haven't crafted yet, but I have the resources to craft, so I crafted a stone pressure plate and button, birch trapdoors, some spruce log and wood variants, and all the different dark oak wood blocks except for hanging signs, since we don't have enough iron to spare yet. Also a sandstone block. I also realized I need all the different leaf types from all the different tree types, so I planted a spruce and birch sapling, and then the spruce sapling almost immediately grew somehow, so I obtained spruce leaves. On the morning of day 14, I harvested and replanted our wheat field, fed our livestock, and then began expanding the platform near the zombies' enclosures, as well as successfully completed the zombies' prison. And it's now time for step 5 of phase 1, the expansion. It's really not that epic, it's just our current base was starting to feel a bit cramped, and I needed to expand our tree farm a bit so we can collect wood more quickly. So, the expansion... Yeah. I expanded the platform out some, destroyed our old tree farm, corrected our fence's existence, and replaced some of our old floorboards with new matching ones, as well as relocated and replanted our tree farm. I then began expanding the bridge to the mob farm, but ran out of materials. And then I lit up the mob spawning platform so I could continue working on its expansion through the night. I continued tree felling to garner more building materials, and then returned to fighting phantoms, of course. But after I dealt with said phantoms, I got back to work on phase 2, and continued verbally insulting the 1-block with my pickaxe. And I quickly managed to get some more diamonds. Well, diamond. Singular. I continued obliterating the 1-block, then another turtle spawn, and then I decided to add a new feature to our 1-block enclosure in preparation for the ocean phase monster party. Basically, now that we have a floor under the main platform, the mobs won't just fall into the void, so I constructed another enclosure for the mobs that fall down from the main platform after the mob party spawning breaks some of the blocks around the 1-block. I did that for the rest of the day, and then completed the new enclosure, as well as expanded our basement floor some on the morning of day 15. Then I finally headed back up to the top of the island frame to continue work on the base. I got to work connecting the 4 wooden bridges we made earlier in a circle shape, following a circle generator thing so it's as clean of a circle as possible, though later it won't really matter if it's a perfect circle since I want it to look natural anyways. And I also lit up said outline with torches along the way. Then I saw that a wandering trader llama had spawned on the outline. This actually happened in the previous attempt as well, but when I approached the wandering trader, he walked towards me, which freaked me out, so I hit him, and then his llamas started spitting at me, and I almost fell into the void, so I just avoided it. Also, it's not of use to us anyways, because it looks like the wandering trader and the other llama fell off or something, because it's just the 1 llama. Anyways, then I decided to get back to work on placing dirt in for the center section of the island. And for this circle, I'm pretty sure I just fully eyeballed it, because who cares? Anyways, I was running out of daylight, so I headed back down to the platform, and apparently the wandering trader survived the fall. And he just so happened to have the main trade that we need from a wandering trader in this playthrough, a pale oak sapling. You see, a bunch of blocks were recently added to the game, but the 1-block data pack hasn't been updated yet to include the new content, meaning we can't get any of those blocks from the the 1 block. But pale oak saplings would allow us to get all the blocks from the new wood set as well as pale oak leaves. Unfortunately, however, I do not currently possess any emeralds, meaning I cannot purchase any of said pale oak saplings. This is a problem because wandering traders always despawn after a couple days or something, whether or not they're in a boat or name tagged or not. So we're probably gonna lose this one, and we'll just have to hope another one spawns at some point after we get emeralds from the 1 block. Anyways, I then returned to my life as a lumberjack to obtain more frame building materials, then harvested and replanted our wheat field and fed our livestock again, and then put a bunch of random stuff into our storage system again to clean up my inventory. Then a bunch of phantoms spawned, this llama mysteriously disappeared for some reason, and then I mercilessly obliterated all of said phantoms. I then slept as the sun was beginning to rise to prevent phantoms from spawning while minimizing the time loss from skipping the night. And on the morning of day 16, I crafted some arrows and then headed back up to the top of the island and got back to work placing in the wooden frame for the top of the island and lighting it up along the way. Also, I forgot to mention how anxiety-inducing the process of building this frame is, because if I let go of shift for a split second at almost any moment, I'd either fall into the void or become a two-dimensional pink puddle via falling down onto the platform from this height. Anyways, I continued that process for a while, and by nightfall, I was almost done with the giant circle outline. I headed back down to the platform, chopped down some more trees, and then realized this pillar of my house was a block too tall. So I fixed that, and then actually just headed back up to continue working on the island frame, because I just slept so phantoms shouldn't be spawning, and I lit up the mob farm so skeletons shouldn't shoot me off into the void, hopefully. Anyways, once I finally completed the circle outline, I realized the circle didn't line up properly, and despite being aware that that literally doesn't matter since the island I build on top later on shouldn't look like a perfect circle anyways, for some reason I spent the rest of the day and the morning of day 17 counting blocks, breaking blocks, and placing blocks to try and figure out why the circle wasn't lining up perfectly. Honestly, I don't even remember if I succeeded or not, but it literally doesn't matter, and I'm pretty sure I didn't. So anyways, I headed back down to the base and got back to tree chopping again. This time so we can fully complete step 3 of phase 1, the mob farm. After converting all the logs I collected into slabs, planks, and fences, I continued expanding the bridge to the mob farm and then added fences to the sides of the bridge. I then began expanding the mob spawning platform using full blocks because in addition to needing more mobs to spawn to trap creepers and skeletons to get all the mob heads later on, we also need wandering traders to spawn, and they can only spawn on full blocks. And there's actually another reason we need this platform as well, but I'll explain more about that later on. I ran out of building materials right as the sun was setting, so I headed back to the main platform, chopped down some more trees, and then put up these fences and slabs to prevent mobs from escaping and surprise attacking me. And I then finally got back to work obliterating the 1 block. And after this glow squid spawning and despawning somehow, an axolotl spawned. Now this is an epic gamer moment. Anyways, I then finally freed this other turtle and then got back to deleting the 1 block again. Then these pufferfish spawned. Ow, not cool, bro. After a little more 1 block and mob deletion, the monster party for this phase finally spawned. I ran back to our humble abode and began sniping the Elder Guardian from afar, but I pretty quickly ran out of arrows, so I got closer and deleted the Elder Guardian and dealt as much damage to the other mobs as I could before they just fell into the platform below. I headed down to our basement on the morning of day 18 and began smacking the rest of the mobs, which was actually pretty nerve-wracking because Guardians deal thorns damage, which knocks you back a little, so I was scared I was gonna fall into the void from hitting these stupid things. That, and they dealt a sufficiently annoying amount of damage. Also, now that I think about it, I could have just broken out the floor of this chamber so they all just fell into the void like before. Bro. Anyways, once the mob party had concluded, I fixed up the 1 block enclosures, and I guess the mob party broke this second roof we made earlier too, so I rebuilt it a little bit higher. I then unloaded our profits, including some new blocks, and then began smelting some sandstone to get smooth sandstone and its respective block variants. I then fought this guardian and kinda got clapped, so I upgraded the enclosure to prevent any future instances of me being reminded of my skill issue. Then these tadpoles spawned, so I picked one up and delivered our axolotl a new friend. Then I got some smooth sandstone variants. I crafted an iron shirt, got a new coral block in a chest along with some dripstone and sea crystals, or whatever they're called. And then these wet men holding giant forks spawned, but I sadly obtained 0 tridents. Then I gifted axolotl with another friend and, or food, I guess. I then crafted a sea lantern with these shards, or whatever they're called. Then this Elder Guardian spawned and couldn't even attack me, but then it poked me when I attacked it. I got axolotl some more food, expanded my army of friends, bullied Jeremy some more, harvested and replanted our crops, apologized to Jeremy for bullying him his whole life. No, I'm just kidding. I built a separate swimming pool so that we could actually collect some of these fish we're getting from the 1 block for the base later, and then actually got another axolotl. This is possibly in the top 25 axolotl related moments of all day 20 of this challenge. Also, I tried to breed them to begin building an axolotl civilization, but I couldn't figure out how. I think you need a bucket of tropical fish or something, but I gave up before I figured that out. I then fed our wheat some cows, and then crafted more dyed glass and glass pane variants with the sand I smelted, and then dyed our bundle, cause yellow bundles look look cool, crafted more bundles, and then got some black dye from the squid, which is epic because we need to collect every dye to get all the dyed variants of all the blocks. But this does make me realize that we almost definitely won't get enough squids from this phase for all the black dye we'll need, so I guess that's a problem for future me. I then tried to breed our turtles because we need to get a turtle egg, but I couldn't get it to work, so I gave up and went back to throwing hands with the 1 block, and then reached the end of phase 3 on the morning of day 20 and was rewarded with a trident. And now it's time for phase 4, the jungle phase. And this phase is actually going to be pretty dangerous because it spawns vexes, and vexes do a ton of damage and can phase through blocks and are really hard to hit, so they're pretty dangerous. So I decided to procrastinate beginning this phase because I'm scared, okay? So I chopped down a bunch of trees, got a bunch of leaves for some reason, and now that we're starting to get a lot more blocks, it's time to get to work on phase 4, collecting every block. So yeah, obviously we've also been working on this phase as well, but basically we have enough blocks now that we can start to focus on it a lot more. So I got to work crafting a bunch of random blocks. I crafted a gold block and a gold pressure plate, or whatever they're called, I don't know. Crafted mud bricks and all the mud brick variants, got all the prismarine variants, and then started farming some dyes with our bone meal, but I don't even know if I got any, honestly. I sheared our mushroom cows, you know, like you do, and I used the black dye we got earlier to get all the black glass variants. I used the other dye we had to get some wool and carpet variants, and then crafted a painting, and spent a little bit too much time messing around with the different painting design. Honestly, I hadn't seen this one yet, it's kind of cool. And then on the morning of day 21, I built a clay to terracotta converter, because we have to get all the different dyed variants of terracotta and all the different dyed variants of glazed terracotta. But I actually built this completely wrong, because you're supposed to put mud up here, which dries into clay, which you then smelt into terracotta. And if you couldn't already tell, all the different dyed variants of all the different dyeable blocks is like a massive portion of all the blocks we need to collect. But anyways, I continued crafting a bunch of random blocks we need to collect, like a grindstone, bookshelf, lectern, chiseled bookshelf, hay block, tripwire hook, a lever, campfire, and some of the dyed terracotta and glazed terracotta variants. I then chopped down some trees and crafted a bunch of planks, because it's now time to get back to work on phase 2. I mean, phase 1. Bro, I'm confusing myself. Basically, I'm justifiably scared of vexes. So I began expanding the mob spawning platform, which for like the remainder of this phase, we will be using as the panic platform. I don't really know why I said it like that. It's not really that cool. I do have a plan to deal with vexes that normally spawn, but that won't work for vexes in the mob party. So when that happens, I'll just run over here and wait for the vexes to despawn. After I finished putting up the fences around the panic platform, I closed it off from the outside world and then did the same thing with the bridge over. For now, this will still be a platform, but when it seems like we're closer to the mob party, I'll light up this platform and destroy this. I then began upgrading the 1 block enclosure by removing this fence and placing in this boat. Basically, any mob that spawns from the 1 block will now be automatically put into this boat, including vexes. And then I finally got back to obliterating the 1 block. I quickly began getting new blocks like jungle wood and redstone, and then these ocelots spawned, and our boat thing worked. Epic. Then some vexes spawned, and it also works on vexes. Let's go. So I carefully deleted the vexes, making sure to not accidentally hit the boat's hitbox and free them. I then got some bamboo and moss, which actually both unlock access to a bunch of new blocks. Bamboo because of bamboo wood and scaffolding, and moss because of azalea stuff, moss carpet, and the mossy variants of all the cobblestone and stone brick blocks. So after bone mealing the moss to get the azalea bushes, moss carpet, and also grass, because I forgot about that, and then I placed down the bamboo to grow at some point so we can get all the different bamboo blocks. And then I realized how difficult the tall grass is gonna be to get, because you can't just get it by shearing it. It's actually only able to be found in like village chests. So I have no idea how we're gonna get that, but I guess I'll find a way. Then I atomized this ocelot, and then began getting all the mossy cobblestone variants because we just got moss, so that unlocks a bunch of new blocks we can get. We also need to get the mossy stone brick variants, so I began smelting some stone so we can get all of those later on. Then a witch spawned from the 1 block, so that's cool. And then some parrots spawned, which I promptly tamed, and I now have how many friends do I have? I don't know. More than you. Then these phantoms interrupted the moment. Bruh. Which was not cool. So I did what had to be done. I also slept to prevent phantom spawns for the next few days. And then on the morning of day 23, I went back to mining the 1 block. And by the way, I have to replace this boat every single time, which is kind of annoying. And then these horses spawned, and the boat didn't work. Bruh. And I started hearing this baby zombie noise, but I could not find out where it was coming from. I literally looked all over the base, and I had no idea where, like, there was no baby zombie anywhere. I have no idea where this was coming from. Also, I replanted our bamboo. And then when I broke this plank to check the void, I guess, parrot fell under the platform. And honestly, I don't care enough to go get him. So, and then I finally got sugarcane from a chest from the 1 block, which is essential to progress in this challenge, so that's pretty epic. Then I got cocoa beans and frog lights, and cocoa beans are pretty important because we need brown dye, which is one of the dyes, which means there's a bunch of blocks that we wouldn't be able to get without cocoa beans. So I got the mossy stone brick variants, and then destroyed my attempt at a terracotta farm from earlier, and made a cocoa farm. I then continued searching for the baby zombie in replay mod, and my notes just say, going insane, haunted by chicken jockey. Bro, I thought the horses were making zombie noises or something, so I hit them to test it, but it didn't seem like it. I also tested our ocelot, and then decided to ruthlessly unalive one of our parrots out of suspicion that the game was bugged, and that's where it was coming from. I don't really know why that would be the case, but I don't know, I just tried it anyway. I don't really know if that fixed it, I don't really think so, but then I made a sugarcane farm, and I guess I hadn't got a flowering azalea yet, so I used some bone meal to get some. And then on the morning of day 24, I bone milled the azalea bush to get azalea leaves and rooted dirt. That's right, I bet you didn't even know this block existed. I actually also need to get hanging roots, but I kind of forgot about that at this point, so I just didn't. I then got our first bamboo wood block and some of the bamboo wood variants. I thought the zombie noise might be coming from the horse, so I ruthlessly unalived the horse as well. And I decided to unalive the other parrot and the other horse, and I guess the parrot from earlier is actually lucky for getting trapped under the base. And the noise went away, so I'm pretty sure it was the horses, and I have no idea why. And it's now time to prepare for the monster party. I began by adding fences to the upper part of the 1 block enclosure so spiders won't be able to escape. I then chopped down some trees and lit up the mob farm. And I broke down the fences leading to the mob farm, so I'll be able to just run over here to cower in fear whenever the mob party spawns. And then I finally began anxiously mining the 1 block, waiting for the mob party to spawn. A bogged spawned, which by the way is such a weird name. Why do they call it a bogged? That's a weird word. Then some more vexes spawned, I got some more diamonds, and then I made some jungle wood variants, and we had enough diamonds to make our first diamond pickaxe, so I made one. I continued obliterating the 1 block for the rest of the day, and got another diamond and some more iron. It's now day 25, and we're officially a quarter of the way through the challenge. We are making a ton of progress getting through the 1 block phases and getting all the blocks we need to collect, but we haven't really made that much progress on the base, so we need to speed up how fast we're progressing if we want to actually complete everything by the end of the challenge. I finally completed my full set of iron armor on the morning of day 25, and then made our first diamond sword. I got back to obliterating the 1 block, and I had almost forgotten how much faster a diamond pick is than an iron one. Then I got a parrot spawn egg in a chest for some reason, as well as some blue dye and jungle saplings. I then brought the parrot into this beautiful world. Oh gosh. Why did I do that? Then we got a frog, which is cool because we need to get frog spawn, which is a block. And after pooping my pants waiting for the monster party to spawn, the monster party finally spawned. So I immediately ran away to cower in fear and to wait for the vexes to despawn. One of them despawned, but the other one didn't, and it kept getting kind of close to me, and I was almost about to fight it. I swear I was gonna do it. And then I guess bro got scared of me. Yeah, that's right, run away. I'm playing a block game. I checked replay mod to see if it had despawned, but it hadn't, so I headed to the main island to try shooting it with my bow. Also, all the other mob party members despawned. For some reason. I don't really know why, but I'm not complaining. It means I don't have to fight them. Yay. I mostly missed, but it eventually despawned anyways because of a feature of the data pack. I then crafted more bamboo blocks, repaired the enclosure, got more frogs, and then got a panda, and then freed the frogs, as well as the panda. On the morning of day 26, more vexes spawned, and were unspawned by me. I got hit by this bogged, so that's pretty sad. I got this music disc, reorganized my storage system, got some vines, more vexes spawned, and then I finally completed the phase, and was rewarded with more diamonds. The next phase is the red desert phase, which means we can get villagers and wandering traders, which is going to be essential for getting all the flowers, and pale oak wood and all of its variants. I made a diamond shovel, and then made more bamboo wood blocks. I then harvested our sugarcane farm, and replanted our tree farm. I began day 27 by harvesting flowers and cocoa beans for dye, and then got back to work placing dirt into the island frame with the dirt I got from that phase. Then I turned the panic platform back into a mob farm, and then got back to obliterating the 1 block. Some llamas spawned, husks spawned, I got another disc, and I was getting red sand and terracotta, and there's a bunch of blocks we can get from that. Then this armadillo spawned. This phase also spawned suspicious sand, so maybe we can get the sniffer egg, which is a block, and also sniffers get 2 plants, which are both blocks. I got our first copper and emeralds, and then got another diamond. I made some brushes, and got Scoot from the armadillo, and made our first dog armor, and put it on dog. Or one of them at least. Then some pillagers spawned, and then I got a random coral variant in a chest, and these are also gonna be very difficult to get, because I'm pretty sure you can only get them in chests. And then we got our first villager, which I promptly got in a boat, which are obviously going to be incredibly useful in this challenge because, well, actually, I honestly don't know why we need villagers. But then a mule spawned, that's cool. On day 28, I improved our storage system, mined the 1 block, got another diamond, got a diamond axe, and then a wandering trader spawned, which had pale saplings. blocks. And I had enough emeralds, so I bought them, and then went back to obliterating the 1 block. I got a mangrove propagule and an experience bottle. We got a camel, more emeralds, diamonds, and lapis, mangrove wood, a vindicator spawn. I got emeralds in this chest, got a bunch of terracotta, used the experience bottle, went back to unexistifying the 1 block, and then the monster party spawn. So I dealt with the mob party, and then this enderman spawn. I blocked the inside of the roof of our house so it couldn't teleport, and then dealt with the enderman. I went back to obliterating the 1 block, saved this llama, got a dead bush in a chest, which is a block, got another villager, and another wandering trader spawned, which had a packed ice tray. Another camel spawned, I trapped the wandering trader in a boat. I continued obliterating the 1 block and unaliving mob, got another camel, but was too lazy to get it out, so I just unalived it. Got a spider spawn egg, so I spawned it and unalived it immediately. And we have copper now, so I began getting all of the copper blocks. And all the copper blocks is actually a big portion of all the blocks we need to collect, because we also need to get all of the oxidized and waxed variants. We also need a lightning rod for charged creepers later on. On the morning of day 30, I finally completed phase 6, and it's now time for phase 7, the Nether. I don't know. It's not really that funny. Which is possibly the most important phase of the challenge, because we can get access to the Nether for gravel, which, you know, is for duping dirt a bunch, which we need for the island, enchanting, which is needed for a variety of reasons, a cobblestone generator, which we also need for the island, nether wart for potions, as well as just a ton of new blocks. But there's a problem, because ghasts and blazes spawn in this phase, which are dangerous, obviously, because they shoot flaming and or explosive projectiles. We also need to trap 3 wither skeletons for wither skeleton skulls, and then a beacon. I then finally grew a pale oak tree and got some of the pale oak wood variants, as well as pale oak leaves. Also pretty sure this is the first time I'm seeing this wood set in game, and it's pretty cool. I crafted some more copper blocks, and then chopped down some trees, and made a bunch of slabs and fences. And then I got back to work on phase 1 by expanding the platform again with slabs and fences. On the morning of day 31, I built a new animal enclosure and began relocating the animals. Then I harvested our crop farm and then began separating the cows and sheep into their own pens. Basically, I just split the herd in half and then unalived the wrong kind of animal in each pen. This is also I can get more cows and sheep for enchanting, but more importantly for wool. Wool for beds, dyed wool and carpets, banners, and for mining ancient debris in the nether later for the netherite block and lodestone. I then began breeding our livestock and then realized sheep won't grow their wool back without grass. And I guess I didn't have another grass block, so I began building a dirt highway over to the sheep farm. On the morning of day 32, I placed down a bunch of copper blocks to oxidize, and it's now time to get back to work on progressing through the 1 block. So I began upgrading the enclosure for the nether phase. I began by replacing the fences, slabs, and floor with cobblestone, which is blast resistant and won't catch on fire. I also made the top area solid with walls, except for the center with a shooting hole for blazes. I made an inner wall area for magma cubes, added a wall to protect from gassed fireballs, and then finally began obliterating the 1 block. I immediately started getting new blocks like blackstone. I expanded our sugarcane farm and then got back to deleting the 1 block. And this phase is actually really important for building our base, because we'll get obsidian so we can go to the nether. And the nether is so important because we'll have access to basically infinite gravel through all the gravel patches that naturally spawn in the nether, which is obviously going to be super useful for duplicating dirt for the island. I kept getting new blocks on the morning of day 33, then got a strider, unalived this turtle for some reason, then got our first ancient debris block, as well as our first obsidian. I got some more ancient debris, a hoglin spawn, got some blaze rods, and also getting nether wart in this phase is actually kind of random, and I didn't even get it in my last attempt, but I'm really hoping this time we do get it, because not only is it a block, we also need it for potions, namely slow falling potions, which are not only going to be super important for the dragon fight, but could also just potentially save us normally. Then a gas spawn, and I actually dealt with it pretty easily. And then I finally got our first bit of lava, so I finally made a cobblestone generator. But then, right on schedule, phantoms interrupted the moment. And then I accidentally broke the cobblestone generator and lost the lava source. But I guess it's okay, we'll get more later. Then I replaced the lower part of the 1 block enclosure with cobblestone. On the morning of day 34, I got more obsidian, and then the first wither skeleton spawned, so it's time to trap it. I began by constructing the prison and a pathway to the prison. I carefully broke the blocks to the enclosure and managed to get the wither skeleton in a boat in the prison, and just left the prison and the highway to the prison, because we're gonna need to trap 2 more anyways. I got back to deleting the 1 block, and then I actually got nether wart in a chest. Let's absolutely go. I made our first netherite ingot, broke some of the copper blocks I placed down earlier that I don't really need to have placed down, and only the door has oxidized 1 level so far, but that's still another block collected. I made a nether wart farm and then forgot that nether wart has to be placed on soul sand. Now that's a pro Minecrafter moment. Then I fought some phantoms, and on the morning of day 35, a piglin spawned, magma cube spawned, some firebender spawned, and I got sea pickles in a chest, which is an unexpected new block. I got more obsidian, and then the monster party spawned. I quickly unalived the gas, but the blazes managed to hit me, and then the panda caught on fire but managed to save himself in the water. Epic. I slowly picked off the remaining mobs with my trident, and then repaired the enclosure when the mob party was done with. And I got a wither skeleton skull, gas tier, and lava bucket in a chest, so I only need 1 more wither skeleton now, and I can reinstate my cobblestone generator. So I remade the cobblestone generator, got more obsidian, unalived a strider, a gas, got more obsidian, got 2 lava buckets in a chest, and another wither skeleton spawn, so I got it trapped in a boat via the same process as before. Some blazes spawned on the morning of day 36, and this strider was in my house, which was annoying. Anyways, I tediously unloaded our profits into the storage system, made a cauldron, which is a new block, and then set up a lava farm with dripstone for infinite lava and thus obsidian, and used the remaining lava source to get another obsidian. I harvested and replanted our nether wart farm, obliterated the 1 block some more, and then got a Heart of the Sea in this chest, which is going to be essential to getting a conduit later on. And then I finally reached the end of the phase, and I was rewarded with blaze rods, netherite scrap, and another lava bucket. I broke down my wither skeleton transport thing, and the next phase is the idle phase, which is kind of like a peaceful break phase, but will get us bees and honey, which we need for all the waxed copper variants. Speaking of which, I obtained our first oxidized variants of some of the copper blocks, and then on the morning of day 37, I expanded this corner of the base for the enchantment table setup, and I expanded the other corner of the base as well to match and to make room for the bee farm later. And I finally had enough obsidian, so I began deciding where to put the nether portal, and then finally built a nether portal. I made bookshelves and placed down where the enchanting setup will go, and then Camel and Panda were getting a little too close with each other, so I obviously put an end to that immediately. And then on the morning of day 38, I tried to unalive this enderman that spawned, but it teleported away and I didn't know where it went, so I checked replay mod and realized that he teleported into the void. What an extremely intelligent creature. I then made our first brewing stand, then I made another netherite ingot, and I can't upgrade my tools and armor yet because we need to get a lodestone and a netherite block first. I then started preparing for the nether. I made fire res potions and slow falling potions, which is about the only thing phantoms are good for. I also made regen potions and got a bunch of cobblestone from our cobblestone generator. And then I finally went into the nether. And apparently this version of the map has a set seed, because this is the exact same nether as my last attempt. And it just so happens to be basically the worst possible spawn. Being in a soul sand biome, it's right over lava, and it's kind of hard to get to the rest of the nether. And then when I went back through, this phantom got through somehow, so I dealt with that. And then on the morning of day 39, I began getting a bunch more cobblestone so I could complete the box in the nether. I went back through and then used the cobblestone to complete the netherite, or the box around our nether portal, whatever. I then began lighting up the area around the nether portal and, you know, checking out the area, which, yeah, there are very few options to get to the other points in the nether, but I also blocked off this lava source and then went back through to the overworld. I went back to getting a bunch of cobblestone, and then my pick broke, so I made a new one and continued getting cobblestone. I then began getting a bunch of different mangrove wood variants. I think I got pretty much all of them, actually. I also got some more parallel oak wood variants and some more acacia wood variants, if not literally all of them. And I also nearly completed my bamboo wood set. I also used the stone cutter to get a bunch of red sandstone variants, and then began getting a ton of nether brick variants. And I also got the basalt variants and all of the blackstone variants, which there's a lot of. And on the morning of day 40, I went below the base again to the basement to begin building more basement floors all the way down to the bottom of this pillar we built earlier. Then I crafted a lead for some reason, and then got some of the oxidized copper variants. I went back to mining the 1 block and got our first bits of cherry wood as well as some more diamonds. And then finally made our first enchanting table and placed it down in the enchanting table area, as well as crafting some more bookshelves and placing those in the area too, on the morning of day 41. I then went back to building more basement floors beneath our current basements, and managed to build basement floors all the way to the bottom of the pillar, and obviously built a ladder connecting all of them up. Then I got back to obliterating the 1 block, and finally got some bees, which I tied to a fence so that they can't escape. I also got cactus, which is perfect because we need green dye, so I began constructing a cactus farm. Well, yeah, I just constructed the cactus farm. I didn't begin. I began and completed constructing a cactus farm. Yeah. And then I got a beehive, so I placed it down over a campfire next to the bees. I then broke down our bamboo farm and began bone milling the grass to get flowers, and then bred the bees with said flowers. And then I made a nether brick fence on the morning of day 42. And it's now time to get back to work on phase 3, because we now have access to the nether and a cobblestone generator, so we now have access to infinite stone and dirt. But it's now time to begin work on the most ambitious part of the island outline, the underside of the island. So I built up a natural looking line from the bottom of the pillar all the way up to the circular outline above the platform. And I had already run out of stone, so I got back to mining cobblestone with the cobblestone generator. And then I upgraded the cobblestone generator to be a bit faster. Then I went back to mining cobblestone on the morning of day 43, and then began chopping down trees because we need wood for fuel so we can smelt all the cobblestone we're collecting into stone. Then I replanted the saplings for the good of my wallet, the environment, and then went back into the nether because we need to collect a bunch of gravel so we can duplicate more dirt for the island. So I began mining around looking for the open nether so I can look for gravel, but after a bunch of mining, I wasn't really able to find a good spot. So I just went back to the overworld and continued mining the 1 block. And then I literally got this diamond right as my diamond pickaxe broke, and I'm 1 iron ingot short of making another iron pickaxe, so I literally don't have a way to mine this diamond. And of course this enderman decided to relocate one of my grass blocks. I began searching around my storage system to try and find a bunch of random iron stuff all over the place to see if I could get enough iron to make another iron ingot, but I failed. So on the morning of day 44, I got my villagers in a boat and transported them to our farm. I also trapped Jeremy to this fence forever, and I began trying to get an iron pickaxe trade from the armor smith. I placed in some beds and hoped that the villagers would start breeding, and I'll potentially eventually need villagers later on for an iron farm anyways, so this is totally a justified use of my time. But anyways, I gave up and just mined the diamond with my stone pickaxe. And then immediately got iron. What in the actual poop? Bro, you cannot make this up. Then this cat spawned and immediately escaped. And then I crafted a lapis block, which I think I had already made. And then unloaded our profits into our storage system, and then got back to work on the frame for the underside of the island on the morning of day 45. And I started by building another natural looking line on the opposite side that I did the other line. And I managed to complete that, but ran out of cobblestone again. So I went back to mining cobblestone, was interrupted by phantoms of course, and then did that for the rest of the day. I went back to mining the 1 block on the morning of day 46, and then I got another bee from the 1 block. Let's go. So I bone mealed our grass patch some more to get some more flowers, and then constructed this little flower patch next to the bee farm so that they can actually get pollinated and actually produce honey and honeycomb and stuff. Then I got to work on the 3rd vertical line thing of the underside of the island, which was a little bit interesting to build because I kind of ran into our house and had to go like under it. And that's also when I ran out of cobblestone. So I got back to mining cobblestone at the cobblestone generator. I then finally got cherry saplings in a chest from the 1 block, which means we now have a renewable access to cherry wood. I also crafted some more bookshelves, and we now finally have a level 30 enchantment set up. So I got a level 30 enchantment on our diamond shovel, and that's pretty good. That's basically what I wanted. On the morning of day 47, I unalived a zombie pigman, and then got back to work on the underside of the island frame. I jumped down to the island with slow falling, and then got to work on building the 4th of the cardinal directions of the underside outline. And then I lost some gold and emerald ore because I only had a stone pickaxe. Bruh. Then a skeleton horse spawned, which is cool, I guess. I chopped down a bunch of trees, and then got iron for an iron pickaxe, got another diamond, and then enchanted my diamond pickaxe. And that's pretty good. We need to get channeling on our trident at some point for mob heads, but I don't have enough levels yet, so we'll just do that later. And then the monster party spawned. It was actually really easy. It was just like bees and phantoms and stuff. Hardest part was having to exist in the same dimension as the phantoms. But yeah, I dealt with the mob party pretty easily, and then unloaded the profits we obtained from this phase on the morning of day 48. Then I fixed up the 1 block enclosure, made a smithing table to get a toolsmith. I guess I got an armorer or something earlier, and began using our emeralds to level up the toolsmith, which was actually kind of a waste of time and emeralds because I didn't really get anything good. So I went back to mining the 1 block, and then a zombie horse spawned, which is cool. Those normally don't spawn naturally. And then we got some angry bees. Yeah, they're not useful or anything, but look at them. Look at them go. They're angry. They're mad. Well, actually, disregard that last part. We actually needed these bees because some of mine disappeared, I guess. So I waited for them to not be angry anymore and then added them to the bee farm. I expanded the bee farm on the morning of day 49 and enchanted our diamond axe. I went back to mining the 1 block, got a cake. Epic. And then got some seagrass, which I think is a new block. Maybe. I also got a new bee, and then finally completed the phase, and I got a saddle and a name tag and bee. Let's see, is that new? I don't know. The next phase is the Desolate Land phase. Ooh, scary. Yeah, I'm actually terrified. This is possibly the most dangerous phase of the entire challenge because wardens can spawn. Are you actually kidding me? So because of that terrifying fact, I'm gonna design a really epic enclosure design in the test world before we work on this phase because I'm scared of the warden. Yeah, but we'll do that later. For now, I unloaded our profits and organized our storage system, and then rode the camel around with the saddle we got, which was pretty cool. It's now day 50, and we're officially halfway through the challenge. We've made a ton of progress so far, but we really need to pick up the pace if we're gonna finish all these goals by the end of the challenge, especially when it comes to working on the base. But luckily, now that we're done with phase 9, it's time to get back to work on phase whatever and get a ton of work done on the base. So I went up to the top of the base and placed all the dirt I had into the upper island middle circle frame thing. And then I got a bunch of random blocks just to complete the middle portion of the top of the island so I could work up here more easily and maybe even actually start building buildings on the island. And I ended up using planks to complete the circle, but didn't complete it. Then I began smelting sand into glass, and on the morning of day 51, I began checking off a bunch of different blocks by crafting a bunch of the different dyed glass variants, dyed terracotta variants, and glazed terracotta variants. And now it's time to get to work on the nether phase of the island. And I got a bunch of netherrack from mining in the nether earlier, so I just grabbed all of that. And then made some tinted glass, a candle, a lantern, a chain, and then a bunch of random redstone stuff. I continued crafting random redstone blocks on the morning of day 52, unalived an enderman, and then placed a grass block on the top of the island so we can have grass up here. And then I finally began building the nether section outline with netherrack. I got all the cherry wood block variants, got all the quartz block variants, sheared and bred our sheep, and then began collecting some of the different dyed wool variants. And on the morning of day 53, I also got some of the dyed carpet variants. And then I made a yellow banner, and banners are gonna be super difficult to get all of because you need 6 of each dyed wool variant for each banner. Yeah, you can't just re-dye banners, so we're gonna have to get all of the banners individually. I made some more arrows, and then got some nether blocks and began filling in the frame of the nether section outline, as well as began going lower down on the side of the island frame to create a natural curve from the edge of the island to the nether section and then the middle circle. And then I decided to head back into the nether to look for gravel patches again. And I found these bone blocks, which are really useful for bone meal, but no gravel patches, so I started mining in a different direction and mined for the rest of the day. And on the morning of day 54, I found this massive wide open area with a massive gravel patch. And there's even another one off there in the distance. So I began collecting a poop ton of gravel, and once my inventory was full, I went back to the base. I crafted some iron your moms, and then began turning all the gravel we got into dirt. I then harvested the first honeycomb from our bee farm. I further disrespected the tree spirit, and then disrespected Mother Nature by removing this grass patch to make room for collecting more building materials for our industrial expansion. And then dog unalived the armadillo for some reason. Anyways, I went back to duplicating dirt, and then on the morning of day 55, I realized that the middle section of the island wasn't high enough. So once I was done duplicating dirt, I began placing dirt into the middle circle of the island, a block higher than previously. Then I went back to dirt duplicating and mined a bunch of cobblestone to make a bunch of stone hose. I went back to dirt duplicating, and then dog fell down onto the basement platform. Sorry, bro, it's tough. I duplicated dirt for the rest of the day, and then sniped some more target practice on the mob platform on the morning of day 56. I continued placing dirt into the center circle on the island, and then a thunderstorm started, so I had to fight phantoms at the same time, which was terrifying. I broke out some of the dirt from the previous circle to try and get some of it back, dealt with more phantoms, and I didn't want to lose this challenge to phantoms, so I slept. On the morning of day 57, I continued work on the inner circle of the island, and I almost completed it. Then I made some more slow falling potions, and then actually completed the inner circle of the island. I got back to work filling in the nether section of the island with netherrack, did that for a while, and then lit up the inner circle of the island. And then I went back into the nether and continued mining that gravel patch for more gravel. And side note, why are there no mobs spawning in my nether? I'm locked in hard difficulty because it's hardcore mode, so mobs should be spawning, right? And I'm literally in a soul sand biome. Like, shouldn't there be a bunch of ghasts and skeletons trying to unalive me at every second? Well, anyways, I guess I'm not complaining. But yeah, if anyone knows why this was happening, let me know in the comments below. Anyways, once I was done stealing natural resources from the nether, I went back home on the morning of day 58, and then shot all of the mobs on my mob platform for some reason, and then got back to work on step 10? I don't know. I don't remember which step it was, but the get the mobs in the boat step. We need to start getting all the mobs trapped for the mob heads later. So I got a skeleton trapped in a boat and then cautiously built a prison around it. I then collected our mob farm profits, but it wasn't a lot, and then got back to dirt duplication and did that for the rest of the day. On the morning of day 59, I completed filling in the inner circle of the island with dirt and then began on the outline for the jungle section of the island. I then began filling in the outline for this section. I began expanding the cobblestone generator further, experimenting with different design ideas, and then I had the genius idea of using waterlogged leaves so that the water doesn't like flow, which allows the farm to be a bit more compact, and yeah, it's just overall pretty genius. I mean, I'm not saying I'm a genius, although I am, and I'm also the most humble person on the entire planet. So I began collecting cobblestone with the new design, and climbing up and down the ladder was getting a little bit terrifying, so I began building a safe tunnel around the ladder up to the top of the island, and I chopped down more trees for some more wood because I ran out. I also added a second tunnel thing with a soul sand water elevator thing so we can get up more easily and more funly. Is that a word? I don't even know. Probably not. I then completed the vertical transportation devices and added a safe house to the top. Also, I guess I didn't add a bubble elevator yet, so I began adding the bubble elevator. I then completed the bubble elevator on the morning of day 61 and added some final touches. Also, yeah, we got a bunch of bone meal from the bone blocks we got from the nether. I honestly forgot about that. I then built a storage system on the top of the island because it's time to focus a lot more on the island base. I continued filling in the nether section frame of the island and completed that, so I added in a basic nether fortress bridge thing. And I'll add more details later on, but for now, this looks good, I think, right? I don't know. Anyways, I went back to mining cobblestone and then duplicated dirt for the rest of the day. I continued duplicating dirt on the morning of day 62 and then went up to the island and placed dirt into the jungle phase area. And I mostly completed filling in the jungle phase. I then built up to get a lay of the land and figure out how I wanted to go about the desert phase. And I then began placing in the sandstone outline for the desert phase, connecting it to the nether phase. Once I had completed that, I lit up the desert phase, and it's now finally time to begin work on the castle. I want to build a giant white and blue castle in the center of the island to act as the center of the island. So I gathered up a bunch of white blocks, mostly quartz, and began marking where the pillars will go. I then went back down to the base, mined a bunch of cobblestone. Some of our copper blocks had fully oxidized, which is cool. Also, the cobblestone generator keeps catching on fire, which is annoying. I don't have a solution though. Just deal with that later, I guess. Anyways, I went back up to the top of the island to continue working on the castle pillar outlines. But yeah, my plan for this castle is a giant white castle with blue and gold accents, which I think will look insanely cool once it's finally built, if I can manage to complete complete it. Then I fought some phantoms, and I worked on the castle for the rest of the day. And I ran out of quartz on the morning of day 63, so I switched to working on the jungle temple. My idea for this is like an ancient Mayan temple inspired temple with a breeze head on top, cause I don't know, I guess I was thinking about 1.21 still when I was recording this. And yeah, I wanted to use tough bricks, but I didn't have enough tough, so I began on the outline for the temple with stone bricks. And then I went back down to the base to get more jungle saplings and some other resources. I then added some copper to the corner of the jungle temple thing, and I used cut copper cause I'm too broke to use normal copper. And then I noticed that a skeleton had spawned inside the temple. Bro, this place is already cursed. I also threw in some mossy stone variants and some vines. And then I placed down some jungle saplings to grow into jungle trees. I bone mealed the jungle trees and the surrounding area to add some greenery and make it look like an actual jungle, and then used soul torches to light the inside up due to a lack of regular torches. And then crafted some real torches and replaced the soul ones. I unalived some more phantoms, and then I committed jammy time to stop phantoms from spawning. I moved more resources to the top of the island on the morning of day 64, and then went into a creative test world and began testing designs for the 9th phase of the 1 block. Basically, the main 2 mobs we need to worry about are evokers and wardens. Evokers because of vexes, and wardens because it's the warden. For the evokers, as long as they can't see us, they won't spawn vexes, but this doesn't really stop them from spawning vexes during a mob party. But yeah, I didn't really find a solution to that, so we're just gonna have to run back to the panic platform again. But for the wardens, I created this piston drop redstone contraption thing, where basically when the warden spawns, you flick this lever, and the warden is sent to an infinite timeout in the endless abyss below. But anyways, I sheared my sheep for some wool, cause the design requires some wool, and began upgrading the enclosure for phase 9. And yeah, this wool will prevent the warden from hearing us, but that doesn't stop him from knowing where we are, cause he can still smell us. Somehow. And then I began breaking a hole through all of our basement floors and extending the chute so that the warden will actually fall all the way into the void. And once I had completed everything, I double checked to make sure everything worked in a backup world. Also, yeah, I enchanted my bow at some point. I don't really remember when that happened, but it's enchanted now. Yeah. On the morning of day 65, I began patching these gaps in the chute for some reason, and then finally commenced obliteration of the 1 block for phase 9. I also checked again to make sure all of our contraptions were working, and yeah, this is probably the most complicated enclosure design. And by the way, this chain is placed here to protect against silverfish, but it doesn't really work because the silverfish keep hiding in stone, which is super annoying. And yeah, once an evoker spawns, we'll be able to just unalive them without them even being able to fight back, and then we'll finally have totems. And also, the monster party will spawn vexes, and I have no idea how to stop them. Like, I couldn't get them in boats or anything. So again, I'm just gonna have to run to the panic platform whenever that happens. This cave spider escaped because I forgot to place in a trapdoor. Bro, this enclosure is way too complicated, what the heck. Then I got a wandering trader spawn egg in a chest, so I spawned it, and he had nautilus shells, which we need for a conduit, so I bought some. Also, this phase is actually extremely important because we have a chance of getting a heavy core, which is one of the hardest, if not the most difficult to get block in the entire game. And if we don't get it in a chest in this phase, I don't think we're gonna be able to get it, honestly. From my testing, I think there's like a 50% chance we'll actually get it, but we actually need to get it. Like, this is essential to us actually being able to get all the blocks. And yeah, I don't really know what I'm gonna do if I don't get it, so I really hope I do. But anyways, I kept mining the 1 block and then got some diamonds and of course some new blocks. And on the morning of day 66, it was time to get to work to construct the charged creeper trapping system. Yeah, this phase spawns charged creepers, which is also essential because we not only need to get all the mob heads, but we also need to get 2 more wither skeleton skulls so we can spawn a wither so we can get a beacon. Then I crafted some sticky pistons and built the charged creeper trapping system. I then added the lever, completing our creeper door thing. Basically, when we flick this lever, it'll open a gate in the back of the enclosure, allowing us to get the charged creeper out from the enclosure and trap it in a boat in a box. I tested this functionality in a backup world to make sure everything was working, and then started expanding the base near the mob farm because we need a little bit more space to store the creepers. And I had to move our fish out of the way to make way for the construction of a highway to transport our charged creepers from the mob enclosure to the storage containers. Also, you're currently witnessing me make a fundamental mistake that will definitely not cause me endless pain in the future. Anyways, then I realized that the lava from our cobblestone generator could catch all this wood stuff on fire, which would not be good because that would kind of obliterate our entire base. So I just temporarily removed all the lava from the cobblestone generator to prevent a fire from occurring. I then built an entrance and an exit to the charged creeper transportation tunnel so we can get in and out while we're transporting the creeper, and then began testing how I would actually go about transporting the creeper with the boat and the lead. Basically, we need to make sure we don't accidentally suffocate the creeper at one of the walls or have the lead break, because then we'd have to get near the creeper to get get the lead back and to reattach the lead to the boat. But once I was confident with all that, I returned to obliterating the one block's hopes and dreams, and then I had to break this emerald ore with a stone pickaxe because I had ran out of iron again. On the morning of day 67, some more cave spiders spawned. I kept mining the one block, got some emeralds from a chest, and then a charged creeper finally spawned. And so I began the extremely nerve-wracking process of trapping this thing. I placed the boat and opened the gate, got it into the boat, attached my lead to the boat, and I nearly suffocated the creeper, but I carefully saved it and slowly and carefully guided it down the highway and into the storage containers. But then this happened. The creeper phased right out of the enclosure, and I freaked out, but carefully began creating a new enclosure around the charged creeper and managed to successfully trap it. Also, our copper is almost fully oxidized. Let's go. And I left the trap in place because we're gonna need to trap at least one more charged creeper as well. So I crafted some more leads, and then some skulk blocks spawned from the one block, but I didn't have silk touch yet, so I wasn't able to get them. Yeah, we need to get silk touch soon because there are a ton of blocks that we're missing out on from the one block. Like, we couldn't get the coral blocks in the ocean phase, but we will have an opportunity to get those again because after phase 10 is the after phases, which actually can spawn any of the blocks that spawned in previous phases. Actually, wait, any of the phases can spawn previous blocks from previous phases. So we can actually get any of the blocks at any time, but the after phases will be a little bit easier. But yeah, either way, we need silk touch. And breezes spawn from this phase, so I managed to get some breeze rods and wind charges, which are actually super underrated. These things are super cool. And then we actually got the heavy core in a chest. Let's absolutely go. It might not seem that cool, but this makes it actually possible to collect every block in the game, because there's basically no other way to get a heavy core other than in a chest, and I'm pretty sure you can't get chests in the after phases, so this is the only way we were going to be able to get this block. I mounted it in an item frame to mark the occasion, and then got back to obliterating the one block. I got some more breeze rods, some more diamonds, some more emeralds, and then on the morning of day 68, an evoker finally spawned, and we finally got our very first totem of undying, and of course equipped it, because it's hardcore mode, so. Yeah, I broke the slabs that I had placed over the tree farm dirt things, and then replanted the saplings so I could bone meal said saplings and chop down said trees and get a bunch of wood. I then got back to work on the platform by expanding the platform to the left and right sides of the mob farm bridge to make room for trapping more mobs, and because we need an area for the charged creeper to blow up so we can get all the mob heads. I obliterated the one block for the rest of the day, and then a skeleton horse party spawned, but the skeletons just suffocated in the enclosure, so it was actually super easy. I had enough diamonds to make a new diamond pickaxe. I was at level 30, so I enchanted the diamond pickaxe and finally got silk touch on an iron pick on the morning of day funny number, which unlocks a ton of blocks for you to collect, but the main ones we'll be able to get for now are the skulk blocks from this phase. I then began trapping some normal creepers in a boat, which will complete our collection of all the mobs we need to get in order to get all the mob heads. I let a couple creepers out of the mob enclosure and began trying to lure them into a boat. I had a bit of trouble and some close calls, but I managed to get the first one trapped, but the second one hadn't followed me, so I began luring it over to the boat as well. But it didn't get into the boat. I was pooping my pants yet again, but ran back around and managed to get it trapped and boxed the two creepers in with the skeletons. I went back to obliterating the one block, got some beets, and then I got a sniffer spawn egg, which is gonna allow us to get like 4 new blocks, I think, because of the seed and plant variants of the plants that they can sniff up. I also got some more diamonds, and I had gotten enough emeralds to get all the nautilus shells we needed from this wandering trader, so I crafted our third legendary block, the conduit, which is actually kind of useless, but I hung it next to the heavy core because it's still one of the harder blocks to get. And after some more one block deletion, a warden finally spawned. And this was the most terrifying moment of this entire challenge, because this is when everything went wrong. Because when I flicked the lever, everything worked normally and it just fell into the void, and it was actually super easy. Yay. Yay, we beat the hardest mob in the entire game, let's go. But yeah, I guess that's 1 out of 3 bosses defeated, let's go. Anyways, I began upgrading the enclosure by placing in more walls, because cave spiders kept getting out, so hopefully now they won't be able to. And after some more one block extermination, the mob party finally spawned. And I immediately ran away to get away from the Vexes. But once I got to the panic platform, since it was nighttime, phantoms started spawning and attacking me, which was the opposite of good, because I might end up having to fight Vexes and phantoms at the same time. Plus my leggings broke, so I quickly crafted a new pair and dealt with the phantoms, or phantom. I don't really remember how many there were. But yeah, it ended up being fine. I just waited for the Vexes to despawn like normal, and then headed back to the main platform to repair the enclosure. And all of the other mob party members despawned as well. So, I I guess that's cool, let's go. Kind of anticlimactic, but whatever. We can't relax just yet though, because we still need to trap at least one more charged creeper. So after repairing the enclosure, on the morning of day 70, I hunted down a bunch of silverfish that were hidden in all these blocks around the enclosure, and I even had to get close to the void chute thing, which was mildly terrifying. But yeah, I slowly dealt with all the silverfish and replaced all of the infested blocks with normal ones. I got back to obliterating the one block and got some slime, gray concrete, and then finally had enough diamonds to craft our very first armor piece. It's just boots, but still. I unloaded all of our profits and then put some of our diamond gear in the enchantment table to see if there was anything worth taking, but there wasn't really. And then on the morning of day 71, a second charged creeper spawned. So I began cautiously extracting it from the one block enclosure and transporting it across the wooden highway and into the storage container with the first creeper. And even though it was still nerve-wracking, I was able to complete that pretty easily. So I broke down the temporary transportation highway and then went back to mining the one block. And then a rare chest spawned, and I got the Razor armor trim. I don't really know if that's actually how you pronounce it, but either way, it's not really useful to us, so. Yeah. And then more evokers spawned and were despawned by me, and we got 2 more totems, so we now have 3 in total. I replaced a block that a silverfish broke from under the one block enclosure, and then on the morning of day 72, we finally completed phase 9 of the one block, arguably the most difficult phase of this entire challenge. And in the final chest, we got a budding amethyst block, a mace, echo shards, and a honey block. The most useful of which is actually the budding amethyst block, because this block is not obtainable normally, and it's the only way we're gonna be able to get all of the different amethyst shard blocks. And yeah, you can silk touch amethyst shards, and there's 4 different phases, so we need to get all of them. And we're now finally on phase 10, the end. But I decided to take a break from mining the one block a bunch to unload all of our profits and sort our storage system a bit. I then crafted all the tough block variants from all the tough we got from phase 9, and also got some endstone variants. I also crafted a coal block and an emerald block, which are new blocks I think, and then just crafted them back into coal and emerald because I'm still currently broke, and harvested our sugarcane farm. And I of course began designing an enclosure for the end in a creative world. And then I began building an army of friends to hopefully protect me from the enderman from this phase. And I equipped as many of the dogs as I could with armor. I also broke down the charged creeper highway more. I broke out the charged creeper gate thing from the back of the enclosure, and I wanted to make it teleport proof so that endermen and shulker boxes couldn't teleport out of the enclosure, but I realized that would be way too difficult, so I just added this little roof so that endermen can't get us, and then began upgrading the enclosure with trapdoors and boats to trap the shulkers and endermen. This won't prevent all of them from escaping, because more than 2 mobs can spawn at a time, which is more than a boat can fit, but it'll at least make it a little bit easier. And I also began brewing up some splash regeneration potions. And then on the morning of day 73, I finally began mining the one block for the end phase. So I continued mining the one block, and the endermen were getting trapped in the boats for the most part, so the enclosure design was mostly working. I placed the budding amethyst block so I can get all the amethyst shard variants, and endermite spawned and escaped, but I dealt with it, and yeah, endermites were definitely the most annoying mobs to deal with for this phase. I enchanted my shovel, and yeah, also I have to spend a lot of time organizing my inventory and the storage system between one block mining sessions. I just don't really mention that all the time because it's kind of boring, but just felt like I should mention that, I guess. Slept to prevent phantoms from spawning. Anyways, in the morning of day 74, I made a raw copper block and some splash strength potions, and then the first shulker box spawned and it got trapped in a boat, which is cool. That means it works on shulkers too. And the shulkers and endermen began suffocating in the wool, which was unintentional but effective, I guess. I unalived more cows for leather and food, and also so I can make some more bundles to better organize my inventory and our storage system. Also, these trap doors are getting super annoying to like flip up and down to like get up here, and this is why the endermites were so annoying, because I have to get up here every single time to get rid of them and then come back down, and like there's like a billion trap doors I gotta flip open in like a specific pattern for everything to work. It's a little too complicated, honestly. But anyways, then the mob party finally spawned, and I just stayed under the awning, which not only prevents endermen from getting to me, but is also a counter to the levitation effect from the shulkers. And with the help of my army of friends, it actually wasn't too difficult to deal with all the mobs from this mob party. It's now day 75, and we're officially 3/4 of the way through this challenge. And we have made a ton of progress, but we still have a lot to do, and we only have 25 days left, so we need to get a move on. But on the morning of day 75, there was still a loose enderman and shulker box, so I kept using replay mod to continuously track them down, and I ended up blocking off my house and poking holes in my walls and floor to get rid of them. But I eventually unalived them both and got a shulker shell. More of the dogs had grown up, so I crafted more dog armor, and then repaired our extremely simple and non-complex one block enclosure. And on day 76, I got a Thorns 1 book and a Wayfinder armor trim from a rare chest. I unalived more endermen and shulkers, and then finally crafted our first shulker box, which is going to make building the island a lot easier. I also got some ender pearls and diamonds, and then finally reached the end of the final phase of the one block. Well, not actually, because now we're at the after phases, and we still have to go to the end and beat the ender dragon. And obviously we still have to get all the blocks and build the base, so there's still a ton left to do. But we're at least through all the main 10 phases of the one block. And the benevolent gift was just chorus fruit, ender pearls, and an ender eye. bruh. But upon completion of the phase, an end portal spawned beneath our base with 4 eyes already filled in, so we only need 8 more to enter the end. And the end is obviously going to be key to getting 2 of the hardest to get blocks in the game, the Ender Dragon head, and of course the Dragon Egg. But the end portal itself is also going to be super essential for making progress towards getting all the blocks and items, and essential for completing our island base. The reason being, we're gonna build a gravel and sand duper. Without this, it'll basically be impossible to get all of the different concrete and sand blocks we need to get, but it would also basically be impossible to build our entire base without access to infinite gravel and sand. Because not only do we need to duplicate a ton more dirt to actually finish the island itself, but we can also utilize concrete for basically every single section and build on the island. But anyways, I began patching the terrain damage around the portal, and yeah, on day 77, we reached the after phase, where literally any block can spawn, and any mob, including wardens and vexes. So in order to mine this block, I kinda need to make an enclosure design for every single phase at the same time, but I'm way too lazy to do that right now, so I'm just gonna do that later. But yeah, the plan is to beat the Ender Dragon next to get access to the end cities and the Dragon Head. And then I got another Amethyst Shard, which was actually the 3rd one I've gotten so far. I just forgot to mention the other 2. I crafted an anvil for some reason, and all of our copper blocks had fully oxidized, and then I realized I hadn't crafted copper bulbs yet, and will need to get the oxidized and waxed variants of those too, so I quickly crafted some and placed them down to oxidize. And then harvested our bee farm, so I began collecting all of the different waxed and unwaxed and oxidized and unoxidized copper variants. I also bred our bees, crafted various iron blocks such as bars, pressure plates, a hopper, a crafter, TNT, although that's not iron related at all. I then bone milled some mushrooms to collect the brown, red, and stem mushroom blocks using silk touch, and then on day 78, I crafted some purpur block variants, and then attempted to plant some chorus fruit so we can get the chorus melon? I forget what they're called, but the thing that grows on top of chorus plants. But I couldn't figure it out, so I'll probably just get that from the end later. I bred our sheep and began gathering up a bunch of dye. I crafted a black candle, and then realized that you can't re-dye candles into every different color, so we're gonna have to get a bunch more honeycomb to be able to craft all the different candle variants. And dyed our single shulker box into every single different color, and since we had each of the different colors in our inventory, we can check off all those different variants of the shulker box. I made an ender chest, and then started chopping down a bunch of trees. Because as much as the thought of it makes me want to poop my pants, it's now time to get all the mob heads. So I began constructing a bridge stretching out from our basement over to the mob farm bridge area, and then began the tedious process of separating the 2 wither skeletons. We need to do this because a charged creeper explosion can only result in 1 mob head dropping per mob type, and we need 2 more wither skeleton skulls to get a beacon. And then I began constructing the charged creeper trap. The charged creeper will sit in the middle here, and all the mobs will sit around it in this area, and then slept to prevent phantoms from spawning. And on day 79, I began building a platform beneath the area where the creeper is gonna explode on the main platform, because obviously it's gonna break the platform and we don't want the mob heads to fall into the void. And I tested it in a backup world, but we need to go lower because it was exploding the basement platform as well. So I built another platform beneath that one. I began the nerve-wracking process of getting the wither skeleton and charged creeper into place, and managed to do that successfully. Basically, we're just gonna do 1 wither skeleton first, and then we're gonna get the 2nd wither skeleton, as well as all the other mobs into place for the 2nd charged creeper explosion. And when I was getting the charged creeper into place, it began taking suffocation damage, I think because I was pulling it upwards, so I quickly ran back and managed to save it, and then got it into place by making sure I didn't go upwards. But anyways, it was now time to ignite the first charged creeper. And you can light creepers with flint and steel, which means I don't have to have it look at me, I can just light it with a flint and steel and then run away. And I had a little bit of trouble getting it to light, but once I got it to light, I ran away, and we got our first skull. Well, actually, this is our 2nd wither skeleton skull, but still. And it nearly fell off the platform too, which should have been a sign for me to expand the platform more, but it wasn't. So on day 80, I patched up the platform and began building the setup to get the rest of the mob heads. And then I made the most horrifying realization of this entire challenge so far. When I was testing, I realized that a charged creeper explosion can only result in a maximum of 1 mob head dropping, no matter how many mobs were exploded. And I kind of knew this, but I thought that only applied if you were blowing up multiple of the same mob. I thought that if I had a bunch of unique mobs, we would get 1 head per unique mob, but no. Basically, no matter how many mobs the creeper blows up, we'll still only get a maximum of 1 mob head. This was devastating news, honestly, because there's only 20 days left in the challenge, and I have no idea how it would be possible to get all of the rest of the charged creepers we need to get the rest of the mob heads by the end of the challenge, on top of all the other stuff we still have to accomplish by the end of day 100. But for now, I just had to choose between either getting a 3rd wither skeleton skull so we can get a beacon, or just getting one of the other mob heads next. And I decided on getting our 3rd wither skull so we can at least get to say that we beat all the bosses, and of course get a beacon, which is a new block. So I got the 2nd wither skeleton and the 2nd charged creeper into place. And I again had a little bit of trouble getting the charged creeper to ignite, but I eventually got it, and And now it's time for the saddest moment of this entire challenge. I went down to check to see if the skull dropped, but I could not find it anywhere. So I checked replay mod, and the skull did drop, it just narrowly missed the platform and fell into the void. This basically meant that the entire charged creeper operation up until this point had kind of been for nothing, because we had already gotten a wither skeleton skull from the nether phase, so that wasn't a new block or anything. We just needed 2 more so we can spawn a wither so we can get a beacon. And we didn't even get to get a single other mob head. And we don't get to fight the wither and get a beacon either. So needless to say, I was extremely disappointed by this. But we still have a lot left to do. I don't really know how I'm gonna get all the mob heads by day 100 or if that's even possible, but there are still more important things to be dealt with first, so I'll just figure that out later. After patching the holes in the floor from the charged creeper explosion and completing those repairs, as well as breaking down the charged creeper and wither skeleton enclosures on the morning of day 81, I then crafted a new pickaxe and broke more things down, repaired the damaged platform some more, and our bees keep wandering off into the void, so I trapped these 2 bees in a boat so that we won't lose access to bees, because we need bees to get all the different waxed variants of all the different copper blocks. And on day 82, I went into the nether, and we had depleted this gravel reserve, so I began bridging over to this island to deplete it of all of its gravel, and began collecting a bunch of gravel. And we now have a shulker box and an enchanted diamond shovel, so I was able to collect a massive amount of gravel. Also, there are still no mobs spawning in my nether. What in the actual poop is going on? Anyways, once I was done stealing natural resources from the nether, I returned home and resumed duplicating dirt for the island base, and did that for the rest of the day. On day 83, I brought more calcite and quartz up to the top of the island, and finally got to work actually building up the pillars for the castle. I also began outlining the terrain for the cherry grove section with the dirt we got, and then I ran out of dirt, so I got back to duplicating it. I also began smelting some quartz into smooth quartz, and then duplicated dirt for the rest of the day. I continued duplicating dirt on day 84, and then returned to the top of the island to begin filling in the terrain for the cherry grove section. I lit up the completed sections to prevent mob spawn, organized our storage system a little, crafted some cobwebs into string, and then got feather falling 4 on our diamond boots. I also crafted some diamond leggings and enchanted them with protection too. And I also combined our bows into a power 4 infinity bow. I also repaired our iron chest plate, unalived some cows, and on the morning of day 85, I crafted some ender eyes and an ender chest. I began gathering up totems, potions, building blocks, and armor because it's now time for the end. So I went down to our basement floor and placed in the 4 remaining ender eyes to activate the portal, and hopped in, and we spawned off the end island. So I quickly but carefully bridged over to the main island. And once I made it onto the island, I immediately ran to the obsidian pillars and began constructing 2-block high awnings, so I have somewhere to run if I accidentally look at an enderman, which is honestly the most dangerous element of the ender dragon fight, other than if the dragon flings you into the air, I guess, but I have slow falling potions, so we should be good. And then I began shooting out all of the crystals. I slowly shot out all the crystals, and then accidentally looked at an enderman, so I quickly ran over to one of our awnings and obliterated the threat, and then began using my bow to shoot at the dragon. And it took a while, but after a bit of patience and effort, my 2 least favorite things, I defeated the ender dragon and got a ton of XP, and I used the classic torch trick to obtain the dragon egg, and that's another legendary block collected. I then returned to the overworld a changed axolotl, and since we didn't really get a good enchantment on our leggings, I grindstoned them and began enchanting and unenchanting them to re-roll the enchantments until we can get good enchantments on our gear. I continued doing that and managed to get a sharpness 4 fire aspect 2 sword, and also protection 4 and unbreaking 3 on our leggings. And for the rest of our armor set, I just equipped iron armor for now, but we can fix that problem very soon because I immediately returned to the end in order to venture out to the outer end islands to get elytra and more shulker boxes, but also diamond armor and tools, but most importantly, another legendary block, the dragon head. So I built a stairway up to the gateway and used this trapdoor trick to go through it. And I turned off shaders just so it's a little bit easier to see. And yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it's day 86 and we have way too much stuff to do to spend 10 days wandering through the end to find an end city, so I just used a backup world to find the nearest end city and started heading in that direction. I bridged over to the island and reached the end city and bridged up to the end ship and then infiltrated the end ship and finally got our first elytra. I also got an enchanted diamond chest plate and some other loot as well. I unalived some shulkers and got another shell, and I was honestly so focused on just getting the elytra because now we won't have to worry about falling into the void as much that I completely forgot to get the dragon head. Yeah, I am an intelligent being. Anyways, I looted the end city some more and then just built a big pillar and flew back to the end gateway on day 87. And then I broke the ender chest without using my silk touch pick, bro. Anyways, I built up to the end gateway and then returned home. I crafted a new diamond shovel and axe with our profit, crafted some firework rockets, and then I took to the skies for the very first time and flew around our base. I enchanted a diamond axe and shovel, and then tried to get channeling on a trident so that we could maybe get more charged creepers to get the rest of the mob heads with, but then decided that I cared more about getting Unbreaking on our elytra, so I began trying to get an Unbreaking 3 book. And I didn't get Unbreaking 3, but I was at least able to obtain Unbreaking 2 and add it to the elytra. I then spawned our sniffer and made a pen for it. And then I realized that because we don't have 2 sniffers, we aren't going to be able to get a sniffer egg this way, but we can at least get the 2 plants, which have the seeds and plant variants, so that's like 4 blocks total. On day 88, I decided to head back to the end city to get the dragon head. So I returned to the end, and I had rockets this time, so I just flew back to the ship, grabbed the dragon head, and then I spotted a second ship nearby, so I flew over and got a second elytra and more loot. And I also got some iron, which is going to be super useful for pistons and some other blocks we need to collect. I then returned home, and then got attacked by an enderman, and I was still wearing my elytra, so it was actually kind of a close call. And it's now time to build the gravity block duper under the base. So I gathered up some cobblestone, crafted some pistons, I then hung up the dragon head, and then began building the contraption under the main platform. I grew a giant mushroom to break the end portal frame, did some complicated redstone stuff that I definitely understand. I gathered more cobblestone and crafted some sticky pistons. I placed in these slime blocks and leaves, and with that, the duper was completed. So I tested it, but there was nothing in place to catch the blocks that were being duplicated on the end platform side, so I built a fence around the end platform so the blocks don't fall off, but also so we don't fall off whenever we're collecting the profits. And I tested it again, and then expanded the platform slightly, and now it's fully operational. I then crafted a bunch of white concrete powder, and then built this contraption to convert said concrete powder into concrete. It's now day 90, and we're now officially 90% of the way through this challenge. And we only have 10 days left, so we need to get a move on if we want to complete all of our goals by the end of the challenge. So I crafted some white, blue, light blue, and yellow concrete using sand, gravel, and bone meal, and then began converting said concrete powder into concrete. And then I finally resumed construction of the castle with the blocks we collected. I built up the outer pillars more, and then got to work on the walls between the pillars. I crafted some quartz blocks from nether quartz, and then spent the rest of the day converting more concrete powder into concrete. On day 91, I crafted more quartz blocks and began adding some details to the towers, and I built the rear pillars taller than the front ones to add some depth to the build. I then chopped down some spruce trees and then got back to building. Then I duplicated more sand and mined more cobblestone, and then I combined 2 of our enchanted diamond picks to make a super epic diamond pickaxe. I then collected more cobblestone. On day 92, I continued chopping down spruce trees, I think to get more spruce saplings so I could build and chop down a 2x2 spruce tree so we can smelt all the logs into charcoal because we were running out of fuel to smelt things with. I restarted the sand duper and crafted more concrete powder, and I was also collecting spruce to get to work on the front door of the castle. But I also began smelting some of the wood into charcoal so we can smelt more cobblestone into stone and more sand into glass. I also crafted another shulker box. So that's pretty epic. On day 93, I began building the roofs of the towers with the light blue concrete, and also began adding some more details to the towers. And I replaced a lot of the quartz blocks I used earlier with white concrete so the towers look a bit more consistent. I also began adding these little like mini wall things on the front wall. I don't know what these are called. I started adding those to the front wall of the castle. I then crafted some scaffolding, and then finally began construction of the center building of the castle. And even though we only have like 7 days left in the challenge, and we still have a lot of blocks to collect, for now I'm still gonna prioritize building the rest of the base over gathering the rest of the blocks, just because we kind of barely have any of the base built right now, so yeah. I then finally got some torch flower seeds from our sniffer and planted them. On day 95, I continued building up the center tower using all the concrete we collected, and finally finished the tower part and got to work on the roof. I then crafted a bunch of our sand into sandstone and got to work on the outline for the desert phase. I did that until I ran out of sandstone. I then began constructing the outline for the ocean section, and the ocean phase is going to be sitting lower down than everything else, so I created this quarter circle curve thing, and then this half circle curve shape outline thing for the outline of the ocean phase. I went to collect the profits of our gravity block duper, and yeah, we have to collect this every 5 minutes or so, because after 5 minutes, the profits in the end will start despawning. Then returned to dirt farming and did that for the rest of the day. And on day 96, I restarted the duplicator, got back to work on filling in dirt around the ocean phase, and then continued filling in the desert phase. Continued work on the outline for the ocean phase, but ran out of stone. Went back down to the main platform, chopped down more spruce trees, smelted more wood into charcoal and cobblestone into stone. I placed more torches around the base to prevent mob spawns, and then began collecting up a bunch of water buckets so we can turn the ocean section into an actual body of water. And crafted more light blue dye, and then tried to sleep to prevent phantoms from spawning for a few days, but it was already day 97, so I crafted even more sandstone and nearly finished filling in the desert phase, and then continued working on the ocean section, focusing on the upper half of the 3D layout. I collected more materials from our sand duplicator, and also collected some more cactus for green dye, crafted more green and light gray concrete, and I realized I could start just duplicating concrete directly instead of sand and gravel separately, so I began doing that, and then returned to filling in the desert section and managed to complete it. I flew back down to the base, crafted a new diamond shovel, and then got back to work on the ocean phase, but then I heard some phantoms, so I acted fast and flew back down to the base, so I could obliterate the threat. I then collected the profits from our duplicator, got back to concretifying concrete powder, collected more profits, committed more concretifying, crafted more concrete powder, and then began duplicating light blue concrete powder so we can hopefully get some more work done on the castle, and then went to sleep. And then went back to converting a bunch of light blue concrete powder into light blue concrete, and got back to work on the roof of the central building of the castle, but ran out of materials again. So I got back to work on the ocean phase until I ran out of materials for that as well. And I guess the gravity block duper broke for some reason, so I was trying to fix it, but I barely have any time left, so I just gave up on that, concretified some more light blue concrete, and got back to work on the roof of the central building of the castle, and managed to complete it. I then placed a bunch more glass panes on the roofs for some more detail, used green and gray concrete to complete the terrain near the ocean section, and then got to work destroying these wooden outlines from earlier, and also began bone milling the terrain to add some foliage. I planted some jungle trees in the jungle section, and some cherry trees in the cherry section, and then began building the desert temple, although it has to be super simple because I barely have any time left in the challenge. But nonetheless, I did that for the rest of the day, and completed that on the morning of day 99. I then began attempting to fill in the ocean phase with water. I did not succeed. I then grabbed some lava from our cobblestone generator and added this lava stream to the nether section. And I decided to shift my focus towards getting as many more blocks as we can by the end of the challenge, since we only have like one day left. So I began crafting a bunch of dyes and collected a bunch of wool to craft more of the colored bed and wool blocks, obtained and planted a torch flower, got the dead variants of all these random coral blocks we got, and more dyed and glazed terracotta variants, made a lodestone with the single netherite ingot we were able to get, crafted a jukebox with one of our diamonds, got the damaged variants of the anvil, got mangrove leaves and muddy mangrove roots, then got hanging roots, and then attempted but failed to get a big drip leaf block, and then I traded with one of our wandering traders and got a blue orchid. And on day 100, I fixed the sand duper, completed the castle, completed the desert temple, built the snowy section, the underground section, completed the ocean section, built a cherry temple and cherry tree in the cherry section, built an entire mob farm, got all the rest of the blocks, built the rest of the base, all in only 100 Minecraft days. Yeah, no, I'm kidding. It's day 183. And I still haven't actually completed all of our goals. Basically, on day 100, I realized it was impossible to complete all of my goals by the end of the day, and I didn't want the end of the video to be unsatisfying, so I actually kept playing while editing this video with the goal of fully accomplishing our goals. But I slowly began to realize just how much longer it would take to get the rest of the blocks. And I kind of want to get a video out this year, so I decided this is where I'm gonna call it quits. But what did I learn from this challenge? To not set ambitious goals because you might fail? No. Even though I did technically fail, I also accomplished way more in these 100 days than I have in probably any other video I've done. And as cliche as it sounds, I really do believe that you should shoot for the moon, because even if you miss, you'll land among the stars. I'm trying to hit 1 million subscribers, so if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more content like this, please consider leaving a like and subscribing. We recently passed 250,000 subscribers, so thank you to everyone who's subscribed. Also, I made a second channel recently, and I'm posting random Minecraft content over there sometimes, so go subscribe if that sounds interesting to you for some reason. A huge shout out to our diamond and netherite patrons. And yeah, sorry this video took so long to get out, but I should hopefully be uploading more frequently from now on, so stay tuned. But yeah, thank you for watching the final episode of Season 1, and I'll see you in the next one.